Chapter 659. Holy Lord, it's right in front. Li Su led Murong Yu and the others to one of the manors in Feng City. The manor was neither big nor small. It was about 10,000 square meters. When Murong Yu arrived, he could feel a powerful aura inside. Looking over, Murong Yu could see a black aura rising from the manor. The black chi was the black halo around the villains. Although the black halos of ordinary evil men were very obvious, they only covered the surface of their bodies. Very rarely did the black halos extend so far out of their bodies like this. There was only one possibility for such a situation. These villains had extremely high stars. Are all the people from the Gong family of the devil sect inside? Murong Yu looked at the manor and asked with a gloomy face. Some of them shouldn't be here. Are we going to wait for them to come back before taking action? Li Su turned to look at Murong Yu with excitement. Murong Yu shook his head and said, Xiahou Zhua, destroy this manor. If the people from the devil's sect come out, kill them without mercy. Yes, Xiahou Zhua responded and then took out the golden brick in his hand. The brick quickly enlarged like a divine mountain. Then, under Xiahou Zhua's control, it smashed down on the Gong family's manor. Rumble after an earth-shattering sound. The entire manor was smashed into powder by the brick. However, the golden brick did not contain much power. Therefore, only a few unlucky people were killed. As for the others, they had already soared into the sky. That bastard dares to attack the Gong family's manor? A furious voice was heard. At the same time, those who soared into the sky flew toward Murong Yu with murderous intent. How dare you fly in front of the Holy Lord? Get down here. Before these people could get close to Murong Yu's group, Xiahou Zhua roared and threw out the brick again. However, unlike the previous time when the Gong family's manor was destroyed, the golden brick this time carried a terrifying power. Bang! 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 There weren't many people from the Gong clan here, only a few dozen of them. Other than one immortal emperor, there were only 2 immortal monarchs. The rest were all immortals below the immortal monarch. Evidently, those people were simply unable to withstand Xiahou Zhua's imperial armament. In fact, before the imperial armaments even landed, many of them had already been killed and exploded into clouds of bloody mist. The Gong clan's immortal emperor's eyes flashed with ruthlessness and was about to attack. However, before that, the immortal emperors of the heavenly court made their move. Xiahou Zhua and Gan Fei weren't the only immortal emperors from the heavenly court. There were a total of 5 experts from the heavenly court. This was an immortal emperor of the heavenly court. With 5 immortal emperors attacking at the same time, the immortal emperor expert from the Gong clan was doomed. He didn't even have a chance to make a move before he was suppressed by Xiahou Zhua and the others. In the end, Xiahou Zhua even smashed him with a brick. Master of the heavenly court, why did you attack our Gong family's property and kill our people? Do you think the heavenly court can wantonly kill people in Feng City? Although Gong Jin was suppressed, his ability to speak was not restricted. At this time, he roared loudly. A cold glint flashed through Murong Yu's eyes. This Gong Jin wasn't simple. Not only did he question Murong Yu, but he also wanted to drive a wedge between the heavenly court and the ordinary immortals in Feng City. Li Su. Murong Yu looked at Gong Jin indifferently, then turned to Li Su. Li Su nodded and took a step forward. Gong Jin, you led a sneak attack and killed several immortal kings and immortal monarchs of the heavenly court. According to the law, you should be executed. Murong Yu, I'm from the Gong clan of the demonic sect. How dare you touch me? You're courting death. Gong Jin sneered disdainfully at Li Su's words. However, when he saw the cold glint in Murong Yu's eyes, his heart couldn't help but tremble. However, he believed that Murong Yu wouldn't dare touch him. The demonic sect is one of the 3 giants of the immortal world. The Gong clan is one of the most powerful factions in the demonic sect. Murong Yu looked at Gong Jin and said indifferently. Gong Jin looked arrogant and struggled to his feet. He looked at Murong Yu and sneered. Master of the heavenly court, if you compensate us with a manor, an imperial weapon, 100 monarch weapons, and 10,000 ninth grade immortal meridians, I won't pursue this matter. Hearing Gong Jin's words, Li Su and the others revealed looks of surprise. Seeing Murong Yu and the others' reactions, Gong Jin assumed that Murong Yu was afraid. He continued, "Hurry up and prepare them for me. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. My time is precious." Murong Yu suddenly smiled. "Xiahou Zhuo, did you hear that? They want us to compensate with an imperial weapon. You're the only one who has an imperial weapon here. I'll leave it to you to decide." Gong Jin's eyes lit up with excitement. Although he didn't like Xiahou Zhuo's brick, it was still an imperial weapon. However, it was an imperial weapon after all. If he had an imperial weapon, he would be even more powerful. Upon hearing Murong Yu's words, the surrounding people all looked at him in confusion. Some even felt that he was being too weak. He was the master of the heavenly court after all. If he gave out an imperial weapon just because Gong Jin said a few words, where would the dignity of the heavenly court go? What was the point of staying in a faction like this? Xiahou Zhuo looked at Murong Yu bitterly. "Sacred Master, please don't. Stop talking nonsense. Just give it to me." Murong Yu glared at Xiahou Zhuo. "Okay," Xiahou Zhuo weakly replied. He then threw the brick in his hand. "You're Gong Jin, right? I'll give you the brick. Catch it." Gong Jin was overjoyed. He didn't expect to get an imperial weapon just because he said a few words. Thus, he reached out his hand and grabbed the brick. However, his expression changed very quickly. Murong Yu, just as Gong Jin stretched out his large hand to grab the brick rapidly enlarged. At the same time, the brick exploded with a dazzling golden light like the sun. A terrifying aura emanated from the golden brick and swept out in all directions. With a swoosh, the golden brick turned into a ray of golden light. It tore through the endless space and smashed onto Gong Jin's body. Puffed. Although Gong Jin was also an immortal emperor expert, he was suppressed and couldn't use his strength at all. When the golden brick smashed onto his body, he couldn't resist at all. He was smashed into a bloody mist by the golden brick. Poor Gong Jin. After all, he was an immortal emperor expert. But now, he had died in such an unjust manner. *T, there's an accident. I just got this golden brick and haven't refined it completely. Sometimes, it doesn't listen to me. Now, he had accidentally killed another immortal emperor. Holy Lord, you won't blame me for this, right? Xiahou Zhuo took back the golden brick with a look of regret. Murong Yu's expression changed drastically. He looked at Xiahou Zhuo with a gloomy face. "Xiahou Zhuo, you killed an immortal emperor? And an immortal emperor from the demonic sex Gong family? You're in big trouble. Although it was an accident, you have to be punished for your mistake. When we go back, you'll be punished for 10 breaths of time." Xiahou Zhuo's face was bitter. "It was an accident. Holy Lord, you can't punish me. 20 breaths of time." Murong Yu glanced at Xiahou Zhuo and said indifferently. At this moment, the onlookers would be idiots if they didn't realize what was going on. Why did he say it was an imperial weapon? Why did he say it was an accident? Murong Yu killed Gong Jin on purpose. The Lord of the Heavenly Court and Lord Xiahou Zhuo's acting skills are not bad. At first, I thought the Lord of the Heavenly Court was really going to give Gong Jin an imperial weapon. Someone said with a smile. Acting skills? What acting skills? I clearly heard the Lord of the Heavenly Court instruct Xiahou Zhuo to give Gong Jin an imperial weapon. Didn't you hear Lord Xiahou Zhuo say that it was purely an accident? An accident, understand? An accident. It really was an accident. The onlookers revealed a knowing look. Holy Lord, there should be other experts in the Gong family. Before Li Su could finish his words, an angry shout was heard. Bastard, who attacked the Gong family manor? When the voice was heard, an extremely terrifying aura swept over from afar. Everywhere it passed, the suppressive void shattered. Gong Yuan. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. He then transmitted his voice. Attack with all your might and kill him for me. Rumble. At the same time Murong Yu transmitted his voice, 10 extremely terrifying auras exploded in Feng City. 10 immortal emperors. Gong Yuan, who was flying towards Feng City, was shocked. 10 immortal emperors. I'm far from being a match for them. Bastards, I'll definitely destroy you. Gong Yuan roared in his heart. His figure flashed, and he turned to flee. This guy actually fled without a fight. Chi. However, just as he turned to flee, a blinding sword light slashed out from the void in front of him. It continued to attack Gong Yuan at a terrifying speed. Gong Yuan was shocked. At this time, it was too late for him to escape. Die! Gong Yuan roared. He fiercely slapped out at the incoming sword light. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the dazzling sword light was shattered by Gong Yuan's slap. However, the power of Gong Yuan's slap also dissipated between heaven and earth. At the same time, Gong Yuan's figure also stopped in the void. In that split second, 10 terrifying attacks tore through the void and came crashing down. These were the strongest attacks of 10 immortal emperors. Even if Gong Yuan was several times stronger, if he was hit by them, he would be instantly turned into dust. Chapter 660. Gong Yuan turned pale with fright. Just as the 10 terrifying attacks were about to hit him, boom! Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted from his body. The aura was so strong that it was comparable to an immortal emperor's. At the same time, a green light erupted and formed a protective shield that enveloped Gong Yuan. An emperor weapon grade, defensive treasure. The immortal emperors of the heavenly court, including Murong Yu, couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the green light shield. Rumble. The moment the green light shield appeared, 10 extremely terrifying forces bombarded the green light shield fiercely. After a deafening explosion, the green light shield shook violently. However, it didn't shatter. One could imagine how terrifying the green light shield's defensive power was. However, even though the green light shield didn't shatter, Gong Yuan felt a sweet taste in his throat. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The green light shield had an extremely strong defensive power. However, it consumed its owner's energy. Although it blocked the attacks of Xiahou Zhuo and the others, it couldn't dissipate all of the attacks. Naturally, Gong Yuan had to bear the remaining attacks himself. Kill! Xiahou Zhuo and the others didn't need Murong Yu's instructions. After the first attack failed to kill Gong Yuan, they attacked again. Boom! 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 Streams of energy continued to bombard the green shield around Gong Yuan's body. The terrifying energy caused Gong Yuan, who was inside the green shield, to spit out blood. At this moment, Gong Yuan's heart was burning with rage. He wanted to escape, but there were 10 immortal emperors on the heavenly court side. He had no chance at all. As the waves of attacks came crashing down, Gong Yuan could only passively endure their attacks. Although he was strong, how could he be a match for Xiahou Zhuo and the others? If it wasn't for the protection of the green barrier, Gong Yuan would have been killed. Die! Xiahou Zhuo roared. He took out the golden brick and slammed it on the green light shield. Puff! The green light shield trembled violently, but didn't shatter. However, Gong Yuan spat out a mouthful of blood from within the green barrier. His injuries were even more severe. Gong Yuan was already heavily injured. Don't let him leave Feng City. Murong Yu's faint voice rang in the ears of Xiahou Zhuo and the other immortal emperors. Hearing Murong Yu's words, Xiahou Zhuo and the others attacked even more fiercely. Heavenly Court. Gong Yuan's eyes were filled with killing intent, and his heart was burning with rage. However, what made him want to vomit blood was that the attacks he suffered were too terrifying. He didn't even have the chance to speak. Rumble. Even though Gong Yuan was an immortal emperor and had a defensive treasure on the level of an immortal emperor, how could he withstand the simultaneous attacks of 11 immortal emperors from the heavenly court? In the beginning, only the 10 immortal emperors from the heavenly court took action, but later on, Ming Ji joined in and stopped the fleeing Gong Yuan. Therefore, Gong Yuan was now challenging 11 immortal emperors of the heavenly court. Of course, it could also be said that the 11 experts of the heavenly court ganged up on Gong Yuan. Crack! Under the frenzied attacks of the 11 immortal emperors, Gong Yuan's shield suddenly emitted a faint sound. Immediately after, Murong Yu and the others saw a crack appear on the cyan barrier around his body. Under the frenzied attacks of Ming Ji and the others, more and more cracks appeared and soon covered the entire green shield. Crack! After a crisp sound, The green shield finally shattered. Puffed. The moment the green shield shattered, Gong Yuan spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura weakened significantly. On top of his original injuries, his injuries had become even more serious. However, this didn't stop Ming Ji and the others from attacking. Horrifying power continued to pour down. Without the protection of an immortal emperor weapon, Gong Yuan couldn't withstand the bombardment of so much power and was reduced to a bloody mist in the blink of an eye. Another immortal emperor was killed. Speaking of which, all of this happened in an instant. It was so short that Gong Yuan didn't even have time to speak. One could only imagine how short the time was and how ferocious Xiahou Zhuo and the others' attacks were. What a waste of an immortal emperor weapon defensive treasure. Xiahou Zhuo put away the brick with a look of regret. Xiahou Zhuo wasn't the only one who felt this way. The others felt the same way. There weren't many immortal emperor weapons to begin with, and defensive ones were even rarer. If Gong Yuan didn't have this treasure, he would have been killed in an instant. However, because of this immortal emperor weapon, he managed to withstand the combined attacks of the 11 immortal emperors for a period of time. From this, one could easily imagine how important a defensive monarch artifact was. It was normal for Xiahou Zhuo and the others to feel regretful. Everyone, I am Murong Yu, the master of the heavenly court. During this period of time, these villains have pretended to be members of the demonic sect's Gong family and ambushed the heavenly court's experts. They killed some of our experts in an attempt to frame the demonic sect and cause conflict between the heavenly court and the demonic sect. The demonic sect is one of the 3 giants of the immortal world. Why would they care about our puny heavenly court? The demonic sect, the immortal palace, and the sacred gate are all powerful. They definitely wouldn't do such a thing to our heavenly court. I think the demonic sect and the immortal palace will be happy to see our heavenly court continue to grow stronger. However, some people aren't necessarily as powerful as our heavenly court. Our heavenly court is a thorn in their side. These villains secretly took action, wanting to obliterate the heavenly court and even frame the demonic sect. It's quite shameless. The demonic sect and the immortal palace wouldn't be so shameless. Now, we've successfully killed these villains, 2 immortal emperors. We've smashed their conspiracy. However, I know that there must be more such people in Feng City. Here, I warn these people, you'd better not have any ideas about the heavenly court. Otherwise, no matter who you are, you'll be killed. Those who offend the heavenly court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Murong Yu's voice spread far and wide, ringing clearly in the ears of the people of Feng City. Those who offend the heavenly court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Those who offend the heavenly court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Not long after, many people in the heavenly court couldn't help but shout. Their voices were loud and clear, lasting for a long time. All right, everyone disperse. Murong Yu's faint voice spread out, and then the people of the heavenly court stopped cheering. Li Su walked to Murong Yu's side, looking at Murong Yu with a face full of admiration, and said, "Holy Lord, you're powerful." It seemed that Murong Yu's few words had inspired the people of the heavenly court. However, Murong Yu's words contain a lot of content. First of all, he first gave the demonic sect and the others a high hat, saying that they wouldn't shamelessly attack the heavenly court. If the immortal palace and the demonic sect attacked the heavenly court, they would admit that they were shameless. In this way, the demonic sect and the immortal palace wouldn't openly attack the heavenly court, at least not for the time being. As for whether they would secretly attack, as long as they didn't openly attack the heavenly court, it would be fine. If they were to secretly make a move, Murong Yu would have directly killed them, just like what he did today. Secondly, Murong Yu denied the identities of Gong Yuan and the others. He directly arranged for them to be the ones who framed the heavenly court. In this way, even if the experts of the demonic sect and the Gong family were furious, they wouldn't dare to attack Murong Yu. If they attacked, it would mean that the demonic sect ordered Gong Yuan and the others to assassinate the heavenly court's experts. In this way, they would admit that the demonic sect was shameless. This was impossible for the demonic sect. Thirdly, Muronyu also warned the people in the dark that if they attacked, they would end up like Gong Yuan and the others. In this way, not many people would dare to attack. At least for the time being, no one would try anything funny. Muronyu only smiled faintly, then returned to the heavenly court with Li Su and the others. Bastard, you killed 2 of my Gong family's immortal emperors. You're courting death. In the demonic sect, in the main hall of the Gong family's headquarters, some experts of the Gong family gathered together, all of them filled with killing intent. The deaths of the 2 immortal emperors made them very angry. These were 2 immortal emperors, not 2 heavenly immortals. Even within the Gong family, losing 1 immortal emperor was a huge loss, let alone losing 2 at the same time. Moreover, Gong Yuan's status was not low. Muronyu, the heavenly court, must die. All of the experts were filled with killing intent. They couldn't wait to slap Muronyu to death and wipe out the heavenly court. Suddenly, the Gong family's patriarch, Gong Chung, who had been silent in the main hall, said in a deep voice, "Patriarch, just let it go." Then Gong Yuan and the others died for nothing. A small heavenly court killed our Gong family's people, and we're just going to let it go? If this matter spreads, our Gong family will be ridiculed. An immortal emperor said in confusion. Gong Yuan only acted on his own. If he could destroy Muronyu in the heavenly court, we naturally wouldn't have any objections. However, the ones who were killed in the end were Gong Yuan and the others. Moreover, they were labeled as villains and framers. If we attack the heavenly court, we'll be admitting that we ordered Gong Yuan to attack the heavenly court. Gong Chung didn't say anything, but another immortal emperor spoke. The immortal emperor who spoke earlier frowned slightly and didn't say anything. However, we can't just let go. The Gong family's dignity cannot be trampled on. Muronyu must die, and the heavenly court must be destroyed. On the surface, we don't need to do anything. However, we can't let Muronyu go. At this moment, another immortal emperor said in a deep voice, "He's just a 9 heavens Xian immortal. As long as we kill him, it'll be easy to destroy the heavenly court." An immortal emperor sneered with disdain. "Muronyu must die. I don't want the heavenly court to continue to exist. However, don't involve the Gong family in this matter, and don't involve the Devil's sect. As for the specifics, I believe you know what to do." Gong Chung said faintly. Then his figure flashed and disappeared. Chapter 661. Although they had killed Gong Yuan and 2 other immortal emperors from the Gong family, the Gong family did not come looking for trouble, at least not on the surface. In the blink of an eye, decades had passed. For decades, the Gong family did not make a move. There was no other way. The heavenly court had completely controlled the Feng province. It was extremely difficult for them to make a move on the heavenly court. Moreover, the heavenly court was much stronger than it was a few decades ago. If the Gong family wanted revenge, they would have to kill some important people in the heavenly court. However, these important people were usually in the Feng city. They had no chance to make a move in the heavenly court. This was because the immortal emperors of the heavenly court were constantly monitoring the entire Feng city. As long as the heavenly court found something strange, the immortal emperors of the heavenly court would find out. Then, the immortal emperors of the heavenly court would pounce on the offender. Depending on the severity of the situation, they would either capture or kill the offender. "Sacred Lord, the Mu family is here." Black Tiger hurried in and reported. Under the time acceleration, Black Tiger and the other 6 had successfully stepped into the immortal monarch realm 30 years ago. Black Tiger and the others respected Muronyu even more because of this. "Let them in," Muronyu said faintly. However, he felt helpless in his heart. The Gong family was not completely settled yet, and the Mu family was here. Although Muronyu was not as strong as the Devil sect, it was still a super force. It was very powerful. The person who came was a middle-aged man. He was about 34 or 35 years old. His strength was not very strong, but he had reached the immortal emperor realm. Of course, on the surface, it was unknown how many billions of years old he was. which immortal emperor realm expert had not lived for hundreds of billions of years. I'm Muji. Greetings, sacred Lord Murong. Muji walked in without any lack of manners. However, this was only on the surface. Just now, Murong Yu clearly saw a flash of disdain in Muji's eyes. Although it was very subtle, Murong Yu still noticed it. Murong Yu snorted in his heart. He looked at Muji and said, "Please take a seat." Muji thanked him and then sat down on the seat next to him. "Holy Lord Murong, I actually came to the heavenly court to inquire about something," Muji said after sitting down. "Oh, what's the matter?" Murong Yu said indifferently. "I wonder if Holy Lord Murong knows where the Mu family's old ancestor is?" Muji asked in a deep voice as he looked at Murong Yu. At the same time, an obscure pressure emanated from his body and spread in all directions, crushing towards Murong Yu. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with anger. This Muji was too much. Did he want to use pressure to intimidate Murong Yu? Murong Yu sneered in his heart. When he left Feng City with Mu Lin for the Wonderland, although it was rather secretive, it was impossible for the Mu family not to find out if they investigated seriously. If the Mu family knew that they had entered the Wonderland gathering, they would definitely think that Murong Yu had killed Mu Lin. After all, with Murong Yu's current strength, he could not kill Mu Lin. However, if they were in the Wonderland, it would be possible. "I'm still not strong enough." Murong Yu shook his head and disappeared in a flash. Just like that, another few decades passed. In these few decades, Murong Yu's understanding of the spatial law had deepened. However, his strength did not break through, and he was still in the Nine Heavens Xian immortal realm. 1,000 years is almost up. It's time to return to the Heavenly Punisher Palace to hand in the missions. When Murong Yu had joined the Heavenly Punisher Palace, he had received 3 missions with a time limit of 1,000 years. Murong Yu had already completed the first 2 missions. The last mission was to investigate the mysterious disappearance of the Palace Master of the Heavenly Punisher Palace in Feng City. Regarding this matter, Murong Yu guessed that the Branch Palace Master had entered the Immortal Land. However, he didn't have any proof. As for the reorganization of the Feng City branch, Murong Yu had already exceeded his expectations. With a flash, Murong Yu disappeared from Feng City. When he reappeared, he was already in his manor in the Heavenly Punisher Palace. "Steward, has anything happened in these years?" After Murong Yu returned, he did not immediately hand in the missions. Instead, he looked for Steward Ma. "Palace Master, the Heavenly Punisher Palace is still the same. However, many people in the Heavenly Punisher Palace have expressed a strong interest in the Heavenly Court's growing strength. I believe that soon, someone will come to find you, Palace Master." Steward Ma said respectfully. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. "If these guys come to Feng City, I don't mind killing them. Palace Master, be careful. They are not from the Devil Sect or the Gong family. It's okay to kill them, but it's best not to kill anyone from the Heavenly Punisher Palace," Steward Ma warned. Murong Yu nodded. He knew a little about this. The forces within the Heavenly Punisher Palace were tangled and complicated. If Murong Yu killed the immortal emperors of some factions, those factions would most likely immediately attack him. By then, Murong Yu would not be their match. However, if these people really wanted to attack, Murong Yu was not afraid. "Steward, you said that nothing happened in the Heavenly Punisher Palace. Did something big happen outside?" Murong Yu asked with a smile. "Yes, the Divine Rule Celestial Tablet has appeared again," Steward Ma said solemnly. "Divine Rule Celestial Tablet?" Murong Yu exclaimed. Any immortal would know about the Divine Rule Celestial Tablet. The Divine Rule Celestial Tablet was a huge celestial tablet. This celestial tablet contained a God law. The so-called God law was God's law. If an immortal wanted to become a god, he must comprehend God's law. If he could not comprehend it, he could not become a god. There were countless immortals in the immortal world, but very few became gods. This was because God laws were very difficult to comprehend. However, God laws were recorded on the Divine Rule Celestial Tablet. If someone could comprehend a God law from the Divine Rule Celestial Tablet, They had the possibility of becoming a god. They could even become a god on the spot and ascend to the heavenly realm. It was not like this had never happened in history. Even if one's ability was not strong after comprehending a god law, their cultivation would be much easier in the future. In other words, no matter how strong or weak one was, as long as one could comprehend a god law, they could become a god in the future. Moreover, the probability of becoming a god was quite high. Moreover, other than god laws, the divine rule celestial tablet could increase one's ability, talent, and even change one's physique. In short, if one was lucky enough to encounter a divine rule celestial tablet and comprehend something, it would definitely be a great benefit. However, the divine rule celestial tablet was just too mysterious. After it appeared, it would only stay in one place for a while before disappearing again. When it appeared again, the time was uncertain. It could be a day later, or it could be 100 billion years later. Divine rule celestial tablet. Murong Yu's eyes shone brightly. He looked a little excited. Steward Ma, where did the divine rule celestial tablet appear? How long has it been since it appeared? Murong Yu suppressed his excitement and asked in a low voice. About 20 years. It's at Heavenly Eagle Ridge, Steward Ma said respectfully. It's been 20 years since it appeared, but I didn't know anything about it. If I didn't return to the Heavenly Penalty Palace this time, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known at all. The Heavenly Court's intelligence needs to be strengthened, Murong Yu said to himself gloomily. Chapter 662. The Heavenly Eagle Ridge was the largest mountain range in the Heavenly Eagle State. It spanned across the entire Heavenly Eagle State and was connected to 2 other states. It was endless. One could imagine how long the Heavenly Eagle Ridge was. In reality, the Heavenly Eagle Ridge was many times larger than the South Ridge. However, the South Ridge was one of the most dangerous places in the celestial world. As for the Heavenly Eagle Ridge, although it was also filled with ferocious beasts, it was also a dangerous place. However, over the past 10 years, there had been a continuous stream of strong cultivators rushing over from all directions. The reason was because of the God Rule Heavenly Tablet that appeared in the Heavenly Eagle State 20 years ago. In front of the Heavenly Eagle Ridge, a group of 6 people was slowly walking over. When these 6 people walked over, countless people looked at them with surprised eyes. Of course, other than the 2 beauties, there were other reasons that attracted their attention. However, it should be the 2 beauties that attracted most of the attention. Apart from the 2 beauties, there was also a large black dog that attracted their attention. In reality, it was the little girl riding on a large black dog. The little girl was about 6 or 7 years old. She was pink and tender, and she looked very cute in her purple clothes. However, this was not what attracted their attention. What attracted their attention was that this little girl did not have any strength at all. She was like an ordinary little girl in the mortal world. One had to know that there was no such person in the celestial world. Even though they were newborns, their strength wasn't weak. Moreover, the stronger the parents were, the stronger their children would be when they were born. Of course, their children might not be strong, but they would definitely not be ordinary people. Ordinary people could not survive in the celestial world. Even weak cultivators could not survive in the celestial world. This was because the pressure in the celestial world was much stronger than that of the cultivation world. Weak cultivators might be crushed if they appeared in the celestial world. Woof! What are you looking at? Have you never seen such a handsome Lord Heavenly Dog? Sensing the strange gazes of the people around him, the large black dog barked at them unhappily. This group was Murong Yu and the others. After finding out that the God-ruled divine tablet had appeared, Murong Yu had rushed over to the Heavenly Eagle State without even handing in his mission. However, this time, he only brought the large black dog and the others with him. He had never been to the Heavenly Eagle State before, so he could not directly teleport over. This was because the God Rule Celestial Tablet would appear at an indefinite time. If it appeared later, the God Rule Celestial Tablet might fly away. Murong Yu didn't want to lose this target. Therefore, he didn't go back to the Heavenly Court or Shenzhen to bring more people with him. even though Shenzhen and the Heavenly Penalty Palace were both in the Lingnan region. Zhao Jiqing, Yu Mengqing, the fiery-eyed golden ape, the large black dog, Little Purple, and the celestial emperor Xiaohozhua. Almost all of them were people who were often by Murong Yu's side. Xiaohozhua was now a permanent resident of the Hichu Luoshu world. It couldn't be helped. Murong Yu's strength was still a little low. Sometimes, it was much more convenient to have a celestial emperor by his side. As for Mingji, he had only followed Murong Yu for 100,000 years and wasn't a member of the Heavenly Court. There were some things that Murong Yu couldn't directly instruct him. As for Little Purple, she was often sleepy a while ago and finally fell into a deep sleep. She woke up a few days ago. However, what made Murong Yu depressed was that after waking up, Little Purple was exactly the same as before. There was no change, and she would always look like a 6 or 7-year-old. The large black dog looked very fierce, but the people around him were all experts, so how could they be afraid of the large black dog? In fact, because of the large black dog's roar, many people frowned. Where did this dog come from? Why are you running and barking? Do you believe that I'll kill you and eat dog meat? A golden immortal said unkindly as he looked at the large black dog with a fierce glint in his eyes. You're courting death. The large black dog was instantly enraged. With a swoosh, the large black dog turned into a flash of light and pounced. The golden immortal who spoke earlier let out a scream. At this time, the people around him saw clearly that the golden immortal had been pressed to the ground by the large black dog's paw. What a fast speed! There were also experts around. After seeing the large black dog's speed, they couldn't help but exclaim. Just now, they clearly saw the large black dog slap out with his paw, and the golden immortal fell. Boy, what did you just say? You want to eat Lord Heavenly Dog's meat? The large black dog's head came in front of the golden immortal and said in an unfriendly tone. In particular, with every word he said, the strength of his paw increased. Originally, the golden immortal was only pressed to the ground by the large black dog. But when the large black dog finished speaking, the golden immortal's entire body had been pressed deep into the ground. The golden immortal said with a face full of horror, No, Lord Heavenly Dog. You heard wrong. I didn't say anything like that. At this time, the golden immortal was inexplicably shocked. He was a golden immortal after all, but he was hit by the large black dog's paw. The large black dog's strength was definitely many times stronger than his. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that he felt the large black dog's killing intent. Little Black, stop playing. You'll be in trouble if Big Brother is unhappy. Little Purple, who was riding the large black dog, stretched out her small hand and patted the large black dog's head. Brat, Lord Heavenly Dog won't bicker with you today. The next time I see you, I'll swallow you whole. The large black dog threatened before running over to Murong Yu's side with Little Purple. Old Black, there are many experts here. Don't mess around. Murong Yu frowned slightly. Once the news of the appearance of the divine rule heavenly tablet spread, it would attract most of the people in the immortal world, or even those old monsters. For people like Murong Yu, those celestial supremacies had a greater desire for the divine rule heavenly tablet. After all, if they could not break through, they could only wait for death. Murong Yu estimated that there would definitely be many celestial supremacies coming to the heavenly Eagle Ridge this time. Murong Yu could not afford to offend such people now. If the large black dog messed around, there would be trouble. The large black dog's strength is not bad, but these people are not that strong. The surrounding people sized up Murong Yu as they quickly rushed to the heavenly Eagle Ridge. Entering the heavenly Eagle Ridge was the most important thing now. Therefore, not many people came to cause trouble. Why can people above the Celestial King stage enter, but those below the Celestial King stage have to pay 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills to enter? Before Murong Yu and the others got close to the heavenly Eagle Ridge, they saw a circle of people in front of the heavenly Eagle Ridge. Angry voices sounded one after another. Celestial kings and above can enter the heavenly Eagle Ridge freely. Those below the Celestial King stage have to pay 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills to enter the heavenly Eagle Ridge. A huge stone tablet stood in front of the heavenly eagle ridge. A few blood-red words were written on it, and they were full of killing intent. They were charging entrance fees. Moron frowned slightly. This was because, apart from Xiaohua, no one in their group had reached the Celestial King stage. 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills? Why don't we rob them? Many people were furious. 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills was not a lot, but it was not a little either. To people like Moron, it was naturally nothing more than a drizzle. However, to some people, 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills was really not worth it. In order to survive in this world, no matter what you did, you had to use Celestial Spirit Pills and Celestial Meridians. Divine weapons, treasures, all kinds of resources, and even cultivation required Celestial Spirit Pills. For some disciples of small sects or lone cultivators, 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills was a considerable amount of wealth. Even if they had them, they might not be willing to pay. If you can't pay Celestial Spirit Pills without falling to the Celestial King stage, then scram. A few people stood there. At this moment, a person shouted impatiently. At the same time, a powerful aura erupted. Celestial Lord. Moron Yu's eyes flashed. Although this Celestial Lord had released his aura, he had no intention of harming anyone. However, this way, the deterrence was enough. Some of the noisy people immediately quieted down. It's not only here that we can enter the Heavenly Eagle Ridge. I can enter from other places too, a mystic immortal said unhappily. Now that the entire Heavenly Eagle Ridge has been sealed, there are only two ways to enter the Heavenly Eagle Ridge. Pay up, or you're at the Celestial King stage, someone said with a cold smile. F*CK. Which faction are these bastards from? They're so domineering. Do they think the Heavenly Eagle Ridge is theirs? That person cursed unhappily. Sure, I heard that this is the intention of those big shots. If too many people enter, it will be noisy and affect the situation, an immortal said in a low voice. Hearing this, Moron nodded slightly. If the Divine Rule Divine Tablet existed for a long time, this news could not be sealed. At that time, most people in the entire celestial world would probably flock over. Although the Heavenly Eagle Ridge was vast, the space near the Divine Rule Divine Tablet was limited. Once there were too many people would not be able to get close. Naturally, all kinds of fights would occur and affect the comprehension of others. Although this method of restricting people from entering the Heavenly Eagle Ridge was not very kind, it was still a good idea. Let's go in. Moron and the others pushed through the crowd and came to the stone tablet. After paying 70,000 Celestial Spirit Pills, the big black dog also had to pay to enter. Although Xiaohua was in Celestial Emperor, Moron did not want him to reveal his strength for now. After all, 10,000 Celestial Spirit Pills were dispensable to Moron. After this incident with the Divine Rule Divine Tablet, they'll gather a terrifying amount of Celestial Spirit Pills. This thought suddenly flashed through Moron mind. If he did not already have the Heavenly Punishment Token, he would also be tempted by this opportunity to make money. Chapter 663. The Divine Rule Heavenly Tablet was deep within Heavenly Eagle Ridge. Normally, even immortal kings would not dare to enter the depths of Heavenly Eagle Ridge. This was because the ferocious beasts in Heavenly Eagle Ridge were too ferocious. There were many immortal Emperor-level ferocious beasts. However, these ferocious beasts had long been chased away. Even if no one chased them away, these ferocious beasts would not dare to come out and cause trouble. Although they did not have any intelligence, there were too many powerhouses in Heavenly Eagle Ridge. Some of them even made immortal Emperor-level ferocious beasts fear. When Moron and the rest arrived at the depths of Heavenly Eagle Ridge, they were greeted by a sea of people. The Divine Rule Heavenly Tablet was a gigantic stone tablet. It stood between heaven and earth like a mountain peak. The stone tablet emitted a hazy white light. Under the illumination of the white light, The divine rule heavenly tablet vaguely revealed patterns that were filled with a mysterious aura. Mysterious, ancient, mysterious. This was the feeling that the divine rule heavenly tablet gave to Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu extended his divine telekinesis to get a clearer look. However, he was shocked to discover that before his divine telekinesis could even get close to the divine rule heavenly tablet, it automatically disappeared. It was not swallowed, nor was it severed. It just suddenly disappeared. Murong-Yu frowned slightly. This situation was very rare. My divine telekinesis can't get close, Xiahou Zhua, who was next to Murong-Yu, said with a frown. I guess that's the case with the divine rule heavenly tablet. If you want to see the feeling, you can only see it with your eyes. Let's find a place first. Murong-Yu scanned his surroundings and walked forward with Xiahou Zhua and the rest. With the divine rule heavenly tablet as the center, the mountains that originally existed around it had been leveled. A gigantic square appeared. At this moment, the entire square was filled with people. After a quick glance, Murong-Yu realized that there were no less than 100 billion people in the square. Most of the 100 billion immortals were powerhouses above the Immortal King realm. There were probably many immortal supremacy powerhouses as well. Furthermore, there were even more people pouring into the Heavenly Eagle Ridge behind them. If they were too slow, they might not even be able to enter the plaza, let alone get close to the divine rule, divine tablet. At that moment, most of the plaza was already filled with people. The densely packed crowd was an extremely spectacular sight. There are so many people, we can only stay here. Murong-Yu and Zhao Jiqing moved a little closer, just a little closer. There were so many people in front of them that they couldn't get any closer. Because in front of him, there wasn't even a place to step. There were spots in the sky, but who would dare to stand in the sky in such a situation? Blocking other people's view. With so many experts here, if he blocked the view of most people, he would definitely be courting death. Let's stay here and see what we can get. Murong-Yu said, as Mu Liyue and Mu Tong appeared beside him. Little man, what's going on? Even though Mu Liyue had already reached the Immortal King realm, she was still taken aback by the sight of so many people. The divine rule divine tablet is in front. Murong-Yu then sent some information directly to Mu Liyue. Everyone, let's stay here and learn. Let's see what we can get, Murong-Yu said with a smile. Everyone nodded. Seeing the divine rule divine tablet was definitely an opportunity for them. If they could learn something from the divine rule divine tablet, it would definitely be a great gain. Boom! At that moment, an immortal who was sitting cross-legged not far in front of Murong-Yu suddenly erupted with a powerful aura. Immortal Duke. He's reached the Immortal Duke realm. When the powerful aura erupted, the expert's excited laughter was also heard. This person is so lucky. He was only a beginner Immortal King before. Now, he's reached the Immortal Duke realm. After seeing this scene, the surrounding people all looked at the Immortal Monarch expert with envious eyes. The divine rule, divine tablet. He must have comprehended something from the divine rule, divine tablet, to be able to break through a major realm. The divine rule, divine tablet, is just like the legends. If you can comprehend something, your strength will skyrocket. Things like this have happened many times. The people around discussed and were very envious of the person who had broken through. However, they soon quieted down. They had to seize the time to comprehend something. Who knew if they would be the next one to comprehend something? Otherwise, once the divine rule, divine tablet left, they would definitely regret it. Everyone, let's begin. If we can gain something, your strength might skyrocket. Murong-Yu smiled slightly and sat down cross-legged. Zhao Jiqing and the rest also sat down excitedly and were surrounded by Murong-Yu and the other guys. Although there were not many idiots here who did not want to cause trouble for the sake of comprehension, Murong-Yu still had to do what was necessary. The huge divine rule, divine tablet stood in the middle of the square like a divine mountain. Even at the back of the square, the divine rule, divine tablet could be seen clearly. It was because of this that there was no commotion in the square. However, if they were late, they would naturally be at the back of the square. Apart from that, their divine telekinesis, could also see the divine rule, divine tablet. It was just that they could not get close to it. Muronyu closed his eyes and very quickly relaxed himself, raising his state of mind to the limit. His huge divine telekinesis spread out and looked at the divine rule, divine tablet, beginning to comprehend. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. There were more and more people at the back. At this moment, the square had expanded countless times. Originally, Muronyu and the rest were at the back of the square. However, now they were at the front of the square. It was not that Muronyu had advanced a lot. In reality, the square had expanded countless times. Even so, the square was still expanding every day. When Muronyu had arrived, there might only have been 100 billion immortals in the square. However, 10 years later, there were more than 1 trillion immortals near the divine rule, divine tablet. It was very terrifying. At this moment, the people who collected tickets were probably tired of collecting money. However, this was not what Muronyu cared about. He was still quietly trying to comprehend, but he had not gained anything. In these 10 years, many people in the square had more or less benefited from it. Those who had benefited inspired even more people to come, encouraging the people around them to work harder to comprehend. However, although there were people who had benefited, they were very, very few of them. Most of them did not gain anything. This included Muronyu. However, no one was discouraged. As long as the divine rule, divine tablet was still there, they had a chance to comprehend. As long as the divine rule, divine tablet did not leave, they had hope. However, when would the divine rule, divine tablet leave? Perhaps in the next moment, or perhaps in 1,000,000 years. No one would know. Because of this, everyone who entered the Heavenly Eagle Ridge was seriously trying to comprehend. No one would cause trouble. Even if their enemies encountered them, they would temporarily put aside their past hatred and enter a state of comprehension. Another 10 years had passed. Muronyu and the rest still did not gain anything. However, on this day, Muronyu felt a strange movement beside him. Muronyu opened his eyes abruptly and looked at Zhao Jiqing beside him. The strange movement was coming from Zhao Jiqing. At this moment, faint red flames were emitting from Zhao Jiqing's body. If anyone saw these flames, they would know that these were not ordinary flames but Phoenix divine fire. Zhao Jiqing must have comprehended something from the divine rule, divine tablet. A smile appeared on Muronyu's face. Although he did not gain anything, he was happy as long as someone among them comprehended something. After all, if they gained something, it was equivalent to Muronyu gaining something. Black Lotus, add a few space shield for Jiqing. Don't let anyone disturb her. It's best not to let anyone discover her strange movements, and don't cut off her connection with the outside world, Muronyu said to Black Lotus telepathically. Upon hearing this, Black Lotus immediately added a shield for Zhao Jiqing. At this moment, other than Muronyu, no one else, including Xiahou Zhuo and the others, could sense the changes in Zhao Jiqing's body. In the beginning, the Phoenix divine fire was very faint and very little. However, as time passed, the Phoenix divine fire on Zhao Jiqing's body increased. Gradually, the Phoenix divine fire burned on Zhao Jiqing's body. Soon, the endless Phoenix divine fire drowned Zhao Jiqing. Of course, although the Phoenix divine fire was terrifying, it would not hurt Zhao Jiqing. Muronyu did not pay attention to Zhao Jiqing all the time. He continued to immerse himself in comprehending the divine rule, divine tablet. If he did not gain anything from this trip, it would be too sad. Boom. Suddenly, the Phoenix divine fire on Zhao Jiqing's body exploded violently. Endless divine light rushed out of her body and shot into the sky. With a bang, the space shield that Muronyu had set up for Black Lotus was instantly shattered. At the same time, a huge fiery red phoenix shadow appeared above Zhao Jiqing's head. Clang! After the phoenix shadow appeared, there was a clear and loud cry. Oh no! The moment the space shield was shattered, Muronyu had already reacted. At the same time, he immediately attacked and shot out waves of space energy. However, it was too late. Zhao Jiqing's strange phenomenon was too shocking. The moment the phoenix shadow appeared, it had already alerted many people around. The phoenix shadow, is that the legendary phoenix? Many people were awakened by this strange phenomenon. Then, all of them looked in this direction with a surprised expression. They had seen many dragon shadows, but the phoenix shadow was extremely rare. However, it did not mean that they did not know that this was not the phoenix shadow. Clang! The phoenix shadow let out a clear and loud cry again. At the same time, Zhao Jiqing's aura began to grow stronger. Her cultivation level was rapidly breaking through. Chapter 664. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the flames on Zhao Jiqing's body exploded and swept in all directions. This was the divine phoenix fire. Although it was not as terrifying as the yin-yang fire, once it exploded, many people would definitely be burned. Here, Yu Mengqing and the rest were beside Zhao Jiqing. There were even more people further away. Once the divine phoenix fire exploded, many people would definitely be injured or killed. Fortunately, Murong Yu was beside them. When the divine phoenix fire exploded, Murong Yu struck out waves of space power and immediately locked down the void. Although the divine phoenix fire was stronger, Murong Yu's eye technique was not weak either. With the use of space power by Murong Yu, the divine phoenix fire was controlled within a certain range. Zhao Jiqing's realm was originally only at the late stage of the Nine Heavens mystic immortal realm. There was still a long way to go before she broke through to the late stage. However, at this moment, her realm was constantly increasing. She directly broke through the barrier between the Nine Heavens mystic immortal realm and the immortal king realm, and reached the immortal king realm in one fell swoop. Seeing this, Murong Yu's eyes revealed a look of surprise. At the same time, Yu Mengqing and the rest were also pleasantly surprised. However, the rest of the people had all sorts of reactions. It's actually the shadow of the phoenix. Did she obtain the inheritance of the phoenix tribe? Or does she have the bloodline of the phoenix? When the shadow of the phoenix appeared, everyone in the square immediately noticed it. After all, although there were more than 1 trillion people in the square, which one of them was not a powerhouse? As long as there was something strange, they would quickly notice. Moreover, Zhao Jiqing had caused such a huge commotion. The bloodline of the phoenix, the inheritance of the phoenix tribe. This woman is extremely talented. Some powerhouses revealed a look of joy. She actually broke through to the immortal king realm directly. She must have comprehended something from the god rule, celestial steel. Looks like I have to hurry. This is what most people thought. Those who had such thoughts were only attracted by the commotion caused by Zhao Jiqing. Then, they continued to ponder. However, there were more than 1 trillion people. Of course, this was not the only thought they had. This woman actually managed to comprehend something from the divine rule, celestial tablet, and broke through directly. She even obtained the inheritance of the phoenix. If they can combine, through dual cultivation, the bloodline of future generations. Some people looked at Zhao Jiqing and began to have ideas about Zhao Jiqing. Not bad. You are starting to break through to the intermediate immortal king realm. Murong Yu looked at Zhao Jiqing, who was in the midst of breaking through, and his face was filled with smiles. After breaking through to the immortal king realm, Zhao Jiqing didn't immediately stop. Her cultivation level was still rising steadily. From the looks of it, he can break through to the mid-stage immortal king stage. He might even be able to break through to the late-stage immortal king stage. Xiao Zhuo smiled. As for Yu Mengqing and the others, they were not strong enough. They only knew that Zhao Jiqing had broken through, but they could not see the details. Crack! A loud sound rang out from Zhao Jiqing's body. Zhao Jiqing's cultivation had already broken through to the intermediate immortal king realm. She's still breaking through? Murong Yu's face revealed a look of surprise. This was because he saw that Zhao Jiqing still hadn't stopped after breaking through to the intermediate immortal king realm. However, the speed of her breakthrough had slowed down. Sacred Lord, it seems that there's a lot of commotion this time. It seems that many people want to take advantage of you. Xiaohua frowned slightly and transmitted his voice to Muronyu. This was because at this moment, many divine consciousnesses were probing over. However, due to the spatial rules, they were blocked and couldn't enter. A cold light flashed across Muronyu's eyes. They better not have any ideas. Otherwise, they'll be courting death. Xiaohua, you don't have to worry about this for now. Go and comprehend. If you comprehend something, you might directly usher in the divine tribulation and ascend to the heaven realm. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and looked at Muronyu speechlessly. Sacred Lord, if only it was as easy as you said. Although it's said that people in the immortal emperor realm can usher in the divine tribulation, I don't think they're that lucky. However, despite saying this, Xiaohua still went to comprehend. What Muronyu said wasn't impossible. Perhaps Xiaohua was really that lucky person in the immortal world. As long as one reached the immortal emperor realm, there was a possibility of ushering in the divine tribulation. Becoming a god in the immortal world was different from the cultivation world. First, one had to undergo tribulation and then undergo transformation. In the immortal world, as long as one reached the late immortal emperor realm, there was a possibility of ushering in the divine tribulation. As long as one succeeded in overcoming the tribulation, one could ascend to become a god. Of course, if one couldn't sense the divine tribulation in the late immortal emperor realm, there was still hope. After reaching the late immortal venerable realm, there was still a chance. Late immortal emperor realm could sense the divine tribulation. If there was a divine tribulation, one could either become a god or turn into ashes. However, if one couldn't sense the divine tribulation, one could only enter the immortal venerable realm. What was the difference between the divine tribulation in the late immortal emperor realm and the late immortal venerable realm? If they succeeded in overcoming the divine tribulation, would their achievements be the same? There was a huge difference after becoming a god in two different realms. If one could sense the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm and successfully overcome the divine tribulation, then after becoming a god, he would only be the lowest of the gods. Deity. As for the immortal reverend realm, only those who underwent the tribulation to become gods could directly cross over the deity realm and reach a higher realm, the true god realm. Then, some people had doubts. Since there was such a huge difference, wouldn't it be better for everyone to cultivate to the immortal venerable realm before undergoing the divine tribulation? That wasn't the case. One had to know that the divine tribulation wasn't something that would appear just because you said so. You might be able to sense the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm, but you gave up that opportunity and didn't undergo the divine tribulation. Instead, you entered the immortal venerable realm. However, you might not be able to sense the divine tribulation in the immortal venerable realm. If you couldn't sense the divine tribulation, then you only had one era left. Moreover, the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm and immortal venerable realm was different. Relatively speaking, the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm wasn't as powerful. However, the divine tribulation in the immortal venerable realm was extremely terrifying. Of course, whether it was the immortal emperor realm or the immortal venerable realm, the divine tribulation was extremely terrifying. It was just that the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm wasn't that terrifying. Therefore, in the immortal world, if one sensed the divine tribulation in the immortal emperor realm, most of them would directly undergo the divine tribulation. Although becoming a deity like this would only make one a deity of the lowest level, one's strength could be slowly cultivated. If one gave up this opportunity, then perhaps there wouldn't be another one. But even so, in the immortal world, there were only a few people who successfully ascended to deity realm, late immortal king realm. Muronyu looked at Zhao Jiqing with a smile on his face. Zhao Jiqing had already broken through to the late immortal king realm. After directly crossing a large realm, her growth in strength finally slowed down. Directly breaking through 3 small realms was already very shocking. If Zhao Jiqing directly broke through from the nine-heaven Xian immortal realm to the immortal monarch realm, this wouldn't just be shocking. Instead, she would be captured by many people as a monster to be studied. Moreover, that might not be a good thing for Zhao Jiqing. After her strength increased, the phoenix shadow in the void above Zhao Jiqing's head also dissipated, turning into the phoenix divine fire and entering Zhao Jiqing's body. At the same time, the phoenix divine fire that she had released earlier also retracted. However, Zhao Jiqing didn't wake up. She was probably consolidating her strength. After seeing no abnormalities with Zhao Jiqing, Mu Rongyu returned to his comprehension. Now, he had to fight for this opportunity. If he missed it, he didn't know if he would have another chance to see the divine rule heavenly steel in the future. Time continued to pass. After Zhao Jiqing gained some benefits, one after another, other people gained some benefits. However, there was no one like Zhao Jiqing who directly advanced by a large realm. Time passed, and another 10 years passed. At this time, Zhao Jiqing's strength and realm finally stabilized. Sister Jiqing, congratulations. When she woke up, Yu Mengqing and the others hurriedly congratulated her. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Jiqing's face. I just gained some enlightenment. Everyone should hurry up. I gained some benefits. Don't go back empty-handed. Yes, we'll try our best, Yu Mengqing said with a smile. These were all said through voice transmission. Very quickly, they continued to comprehend. However, a few years had passed. Other than Zhao Jiqing, Mu Rongyu and the others didn't gain anything. What a tragedy. Are we really not fated with the divine rule, celestial tablet? Mu Rongyu opened his eyes and said gloomily. All these years, other than Zhao Jiqing, many people had gained benefits. However, it wasn't them. Wait, Mengqing seems to have gained some benefits? Mu Rongyu's eyes subconsciously swept across Yu Mengqing's body. Mu Rongyu's face immediately lit up with joy when he saw it. At this time, Yu Mengqing's body was covered by a faint layer of aqua blue light. However, Yu Mengqing didn't seem to notice her own changes. Mu Rongyu immediately made his move. He used space power to add a few space shields around Yu Mengqing to prevent others from discovering her. They were all together. It was nothing if Zhao Jiqing alone gained benefits. However, if Yu Mengqing also gained benefits, it would definitely make some people jealous. Then, something unexpected might happen. What does the divine rule, celestial tablet contain? Mu Rongyu looked at the divine rule, celestial tablet, and muttered to himself. The entire divine rule, celestial tablet, was covered by a hazy white light. Within the hazy white light, there were mysterious veins. These veins, each one of them looks like... Mu Rongyu stared at these veins. For the past few decades, Mu Rongyu had been looking at these veins. However, he didn't find anything special. That's not right. These veins seem to be a little different from before. Jiqing said before that her breakthrough seemed to have something to do with these veins. Mu Rongyu suddenly noticed that one of the veins was a little different from the one he had seen before. Chapter 665. When Mu Rongyu saw the unique pattern, he was attracted to it. Then he stared at the vein pattern. Time continued to pass. As Mu Rongyu stared at the pattern, he unknowingly became immersed in it. At that moment, in Mu Rongyu's eyes, there was no longer the God-ruled divine tablet, the pattern, or anything else around him. In his eyes, it was as if he had come to the side of a small pond. In the middle of this small pond, there was a small goldfish swimming happily. A goldfish. Mu Rongyu stood beside the pond and looked at the goldfish. He frowned slightly. He could not tell what was different about the pond. The goldfish was just an ordinary goldfish. There was nothing different about it. Besides the pond and the goldfish, there was nothing else here. Everything is very normal, very normal. Mu Rongyu frowned slightly. Everything around him was too normal. It was so normal that it was a little abnormal. I entered this space by looking at the pattern on the God Rule Divine Tablet. No matter what space this is, there must be something extraordinary about it. Murong Yu thought to himself as he looked at the goldfish swimming in the pond. Eh. Not long after, Murong Yu's face revealed a look of surprise. I knew this place was not ordinary. Murong Yu laughed in his heart, because just now, he found something strange on the body of the goldfish that was swimming around. In reality, it was not the goldfish that was strange. Instead, Murong Yu had noticed that the goldfish's swimming path seemed to have a specific pattern. It revealed a mysterious aura. What do these mysterious trajectories represent? Murong Yu looked at the goldfish swimming in the pond. He looked at the patterns that were filled with mysterious aura and gradually became engrossed. Even if Murong Yu did not deliberately cultivate the chaotic celestial record, it was still running automatically. As Murong Yu stared at the goldfish's swimming trajectory, the chaotic celestial record revolved even faster. None of these Murong Yu noticed anything strange. If Murong Yu had noticed the anomaly and seen the current circulation route of the chaotic celestial record, he would have been shocked. This was because the chaotic celestial record circulation path was actually the same as the goldfish's. As more and more people entered the Sky Eagle Ridge, more and more people benefited from the God Rule Sky Tablet. However, most of them were people who didn't get any benefits. A few decades ago, more than 1 trillion people had gathered in the Heavenly Eagle Ridge. Now, the number had already exceeded 1 trillion, or even more, on the square in front of the Divine Rule Divine Tablet. Murong Yu and the rest had been there for more than 100 years. Besides Zhao Jiqing, who obtained comprehension and broke through to the advanced stage of the Immortal King realm from the 9 Heavens' mysterious Immortal realm, the others didn't obtain any benefits. Or rather, no one had gained any obvious benefits yet. At this moment, the light blue light on Yu Mengqing's body had completely engulfed her. If anyone could see the phenomenon on Yu Mengqing's body, they would be shocked. At this moment, a miniature image of a vast ocean appeared in the void above Yu Mengqing's head. The miniature image of the ocean wasn't big, but if someone probed it with their divine telekinesis, they would discover that the ocean inside was no different from a real ocean. At the same time, Yu Mengqing's strength had also broken through to the intermediate stage of the Immortal King realm. Moreover, it seemed like her strength hadn't stopped growing. Her previous cultivation level was the same as Zhao Jiqing's, which was only the 9 Heavens' mysterious immortal realm. As time passed, the phenomenon on Yu Mengqing's body had already disappeared. She had also woken up from her comprehension. Advanced stage Immortal King realm. Yu Mengqing sensed her current strength and smiled slightly. However, the increase in her strength wasn't what made Yu Mengqing the happiest. What made her the happiest was, looking around, Yu Mengqing saw that Murong Yu and the others were still in the midst of comprehending. Or rather, they were trying their best to comprehend something. She didn't disturb them and once again entered the state of comprehension to consolidate her cultivation. When Murong Yu and the others had entered the Heavenly Eagle Ridge for 200 years, the fiery-eyed golden ape opened his eyes and smiled. He had also gained some benefits. Although it wasn't much, it allowed his strength to break through a small realm and reach the 9 Heavens' mysterious immortal realm. He was only 1 step away from the Immortal King realm. He had received the Heavenly Demon God's inheritance, so he believed that he would reach the Immortal King realm soon. Apart from the 3 of them, Xiao Zhua, Mu Liue, Mu Tong, the Big Black Dog, and Little Purple didn't gain anything. Little Purple was slightly better. She didn't have much cultivation level to begin with, so she didn't benefit from these divine rule heaven steals. She had entered the Hichu Luoshu world not long after the beginning. It was really boring here. There were many people in the square, so no one noticed Little Purple's sudden disappearance. This was because everyone's attention was attracted by the divine rule heaven steals. As for the Big Black Dog, he was bored to death and didn't comprehend anything at all. This was because he didn't need to. Whether he was strong or not, he only needed to devour. As long as he devoured enough power, his strength would continue to grow. Therefore, he had slept for the past 200 years. This is depressing. I used to be the strongest, but now I've become the weakest. Yu Mengqing and Zhao Jiqing had already consolidated their cultivation level. Moreover, after they gained some benefits, they wouldn't gain anything if they continued to comprehend. As such, Mu Liu spoke with a gloomy expression while the four of them were chatting via voice transmission. Liu, your talent is much more terrifying than ours. Even if you didn't gain any benefits, it's only a matter of time before you surpass us in terms of cultivation level, Zhao Jiqing said with a smile. Zhao Jiqing's talent was extremely terrifying. She originally had an immortal spiritual body, and later, she received the Phoenix clan's inheritance and was modified to have the Phoenix bloodline. Moreover, Mu Liu's talent and aptitude weren't inferior to hers at all. One had to know that Mu Liu was nurtured by Mu Lin, the celestial venerable, as soon as she was born. Whether it was aptitude, talent, or other aspects, Mu Liu wasn't bad. This could be seen from the fact that she was able to break through to the Celestial King stage in such a short time, even though she had been suppressing her cultivation level. Several hundred years ago, Mu Liu had just broken through to the Celestial King stage. When they entered the Heavenly Eagle Ridge, Mu Liu's cultivation level had already reached the intermediate stage of the Celestial King stage. Now, after a short 200 years, her cultivation level was already close to the late stage of the Celestial King stage. This cultivation speed had already surpassed Muronyu's. Perhaps some people were confused. Wasn't Mu Liu's talent the same as Zhao Jiqing's? Why was her cultivation speed so much faster than Zhao Jiqing's? Didn't this mean that Zhao Jiqing's talent was far inferior to Mu Liu's? That wasn't the case. First of all, Mu Liu was much older than Zhao Jiqing. Moreover, she had been nurtured by Mu Lin with all kinds of top-notch things since she was born, although Mu Liu didn't take the initiative to cultivate. However, since she didn't cultivate, she naturally didn't use up the various resources on her. After a long time, her body was filled with all kinds of power. After countless years, when she first started to cultivate, her strength exploded. This was the so-called good preparation. Once Mu Liu used up all the power accumulated in her body, her cultivation speed would return to normal. At that time, she would be about the same as Zhao Jiqing. I wonder if the little man will break through? Mu Liu smiled and looked at Murongyu. She didn't care much about the difference in strength between her and Zhao Jiqing. After all, they were on the same side. The big hooligan should have comprehended something. I wonder if he can break through to the Celestial King stage this time? Yu Mengqing said with a smile. He should be able to. We've all comprehended something. If Murong has comprehended something, he should be able to give us a surprise. I wonder if he'll be able to fight against celestial emperors then? Zhao Jiqing said calmly. Let's hope he can give us a surprise. The three women chatted and didn't disturb Murongyu. Murong seems to be starting to break through. At this moment, Zhao Jiqing suddenly felt waves of powerful aura emanating from Murongyu's body. At the same time, Murongyu's body began to emit a black light. As time passed, the black light on Murongyu's body became more and more intense. Soon, Murongyu's entire body was enveloped by the black light. In addition, ripples appeared in the space around Murongyu as if the space was constantly trembling. The sacred lord is breaking through. Xiaozhua opened his eyes as if he sensed something. Then, a restriction enveloped the few of them. At this moment, Murongyu was still watching the goldfish swimming in the pond. However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sound exploded in Murongyu's mind. Following the earth-shattering explosion, the goldfish in front of Murongyu disappeared in an instant. The pond quickly dried up as well. In the end, the space that Murongyu was in collapsed. Murongyu's mind jolted. Then, he felt himself retreat from that space. As soon as he retreated from that space, Murongyu felt that his body seemed to be a little different. His mind turned, and a look of joy appeared on his face. Am I going to break through? Murongyu thought to himself. Then, he took the initiative to circulate the chaotic celestial record, preparing to break through. Why is the God Rule celestial tablet shrinking? Just as Murongyu retreated from that space in the Year of the Snake, the God Rule celestial tablet also changed. The God Rule celestial tablet, which had been standing on the ground like a mountain peak, was shrinking rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's true. The God Rule Celestial Tablet is shrinking rapidly. Is it going to fly away? At this moment, many people near the God Rule Celestial Tablet had already noticed the abnormality. Chapter 666. Whoosh! Under the gazes of countless people, the God Rule Celestial Tablet shrunk rapidly. Soon, it was only 1 meter tall and half a meter wide. Then, the God Rule Celestial Tablet shook and turned into a flash of white light that shot into the distant sky. The God Rule Celestial Tablet was about to fly away. Seeing this, many people sighed inwardly. It was a pity. There were too few people who benefited from the God Rule Sky Tablet this time. Most of them did not gain anything at all. However, they believed that as long as the God Rule Celestial Tablet allowed them to study it, they would definitely gain something. However, the God Rule Celestial Tablet appeared at random times. It would fly away after a certain period of time. How could it give them time to study it? Where do you think you're going? Just as the God Rule Celestial Tablet flew away, a few scoffs were heard. Then a few large hands tore through the void. They contained terrifying power and reached out to grab the God Rule Celestial Tablet that was flying away. Almost 1,000 people attacked at once. There was no lack of immortal supremacy powerhouses among them. There were even more immortal emperor and immortal lord powerhouses. The God Rule Celestial Tablet was not slow, but the powerhouses who attacked were not slow either. In just an instant, a few large hands approached the God Rule Celestial Tablet and reached out to grab the God Rule Celestial Tablet that had shrunk countless times. Could the God Rule Celestial Tablet be caught? If that was the case, would they not be able to study it forever? Seeing these people make a move, countless people in the surroundings watched with unblinking eyes. Crack! The large hands were about to grab the God Rule Celestial Tablet. At that moment, a few bolts of purple lightning appeared out of thin air and struck the large hands directly. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The large hands closest to the tablet exploded under the purple lightning's attack. None of them were spared. The moment the large hands shattered, the person who reached out the large hands felt as if he had been electrocuted. His entire body shook, and he could not help but groan. Some people nearby even noticed that there was a trace of blood at the corner of their mouths. At the same time, more purple lightning appeared out of thin air. Every large hand was struck by a bolt of purple lightning. These large hands were instantly shattered into dust, and at the same time, the purple lightning disappeared. With a whoosh, the Divine Rule Celestial Tablet turned into a flash of white light and disappeared into the distant horizon, disappearing before everyone's eyes. Puff! The moment the large hands were shattered by the purple lightning, some of the people who had their hands destroyed were immediately seriously injured and spat out blood. His mind was damaged. It would be difficult for him to recover. I'm afraid I won't be able to break through in the future. An immortal venerable wiped the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth and said with an unsightly expression. He was one of the people who attacked just now. His strength had reached the immortal venerable realm, which was extremely terrifying. However, at this moment, his face was filled with regret. Just a moment ago, his mind had been severely injured by the violet lightning. If there were no accidents, it would be impossible for him to recover his damaged mind. If their minds could not recover, their strength would not increase. Not to mention sensing the divine tribulation and transcending the tribulation to become a god. At the same time, the thousands of people who had attacked earlier were the same. Their faces were gloomy and ashen. Their minds were severely injured. Physical injuries could be healed with all sorts of pills and treasures. However, it was extremely difficult for their minds to recover. It's heaven and earth's punishment. The Divine Rule Celestial Tablet is formed by the heaven and earth rules. Those who try to take it for themselves will be punished by heaven. An immortal venerable sighed with an unsightly expression and then disappeared from where he was in a flash. I'm afraid I won't be able to become an immortal venerable in this lifetime. Even if I sense the divine tribulation and my mind is severely injured, I'm afraid I'll die in the tribulation lightning. Forget it, forget it. An immortal emperor said softly with an unsightly expression and then disappeared from where he was. These people had tried to take the divine rule, celestial tablet for themselves, so they were punished by heaven and earth. Although the violet lightning had only shattered their large hands and minds, it was a severe punishment to severely injure their minds. Sigh, I've been here for less than a year, and the divine rule, celestial tablet, has flown away. An immortal looked up at the sky and sighed with regret. Brother, you've only been here for a year? That's not bad. I've just arrived, and I haven't even seen the divine rule, celestial tablet. Another immortal said gloomily. I've been here for hundreds of years, and I haven't gained anything. Those who have been here for a long time were even more gloomy. Let's go. Whether we gain anything or not depends on our luck. Many immortals sighed unwillingly and then flew out of Heavenly Eagle Ridge at full speed. Since the divine rule, celestial tablet, had flown away, there was no point for them to continue staying here. At the moment, Murong was still sitting cross-legged on the ground. His entire body was enveloped by black, chaotic energy. Those outside could not see Murong at all, who was shrouded in black energy. At the same time, waves of extremely powerful aura continuously emanated from Murong body. It was getting stronger and stronger. Murong cultivation level was also approaching Immortal King level. Ladies, I'm Zhang Fan. Greetings. I wonder if I'll have the honor of inviting you ladies out for a drink? When Murong was breaking through, a pale-faced young man walked over with a few people. He smiled at Zhao Jiqing and the rest. Before the God Mandate Sky Tablet disappeared, everyone who came here wanted to gain some benefits from the God Mandate Sky Tablet. No one wasted their time. At that time, there was no trouble at all. However, now that the Divine Rules Celestial Tablet had disappeared, some people were tempted. On the other hand, Zhao Jiqing and the rest were in their original appearances. Some people were shocked when they saw them. People like Zhang Fan even came up to them directly. Not interested. The three ladies were fully focused on Murong and did not even look at Zhang Fan. Yu Mengqing said impatiently. A cold light flashed through Zhang Fan's eyes. He took a few steps closer, and his smile became even brighter. I'm from Heavenly Eagle State's Zhang family. Ladies, are you really not interested in having a drink with me? I really want to be friends with you. Zhang family was a powerful force in Heavenly Eagle State. It was a first-rate force in the immortal world. Although it was not the strongest in Heavenly Eagle State, it was one of the strongest families. Aha, Zhang Fan, you can't monopolize so many beauties. I, Li Song, am also here to bask in the glory. I hope you ladies will give me face. A young man in a pale yellow shirt walked over. His name was Li Song. He was from Heavenly Eagle State's Li family. The Li family and Zhang family were similar in strength. Such a beauty! How can I be left out? Li Song's voice hadn't even finished when another voice sounded. At the same time, a young man in a green shirt walked over. He was from Heavenly Eagle State's Huang family, Huang Kuan. Scram! Mu Liyue glanced at the three of them coldly and suddenly shouted. Zhang Fan and the other two were originally smiling. However, after Mu Liyue shouted at them, their expressions changed. On the surface, these three fellows appeared to be graceful and elegant, as if they were good people. However, if you believe them, you would be in for a tragedy. These three guys were famous in Heavenly Eagle State for being hedonistic disciples. They relied on their family's power to do whatever they wanted. If Murong opened his eyes now, he would see that these three guys were surrounded by black gas. They were star-level villains. Are you guys refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? We invited you nicely, but you didn't want to go. You're shameless. Zhang Fan's face darkened. His eyes were filled with lust as he looked at Zhao Jiqing and the other two girls. In fact, his eyes were mainly on Zhao Jiqing, Mu Liyue, and Yu Mengqing. As for Mu Tong, although she was pretty when she stood next to Zhao Jiqing and the other two, the gap between them was still huge. It was not that Mu Tong was not beautiful. In fact, it was because Zhao Jiqing and the other girls were too beautiful. "You guys are courting death." A loud shout was heard. Then, a golden light appeared out of thin air. It carried a terrifying force and slammed down on Zhang Fan. The fire-eyed golden ape had finally made his move. "You guys are courting death." Zhang Fan was in the Immortal King realm. Seeing that the fire-eyed golden ape was only in the Nine Heavens Xian Immortal realm, he could not help but laugh. With a look of disdain, he stretched out his hand and punched the Jingu Bang. Bang! After a loud bang, a terrifying force exploded. The Jingu Bang was sent flying by the powerful force. The fire-eyed golden ape was also forced to take a few steps back. Zhang Fan, who was in the Immortal King realm, turned pale. He was sent flying dozens of steps back. It was obvious who was superior. "Zhang Fan, you become even more powerful than before. You were actually forced to retreat by a Nine Heavens Xian Immortal." Li Song's voice was filled with disdain. Zhang Fan was enraged, and his face was flushed red. This was because he was enraged. "You hid your strength? Very well. Today, I will kill all of you. The few of you will not be able to escape from my hands." Zhang Fan looked at the fire-eyed golden ape with a ferocious expression. Finally, he said to Zhao Jiqing and the other two, "F*CKU. Today, your master ape will kill you." The fire-eyed golden ape was furious. His body swayed, and he swung the Jingu Bang at Zhang Fan again. "How dare you?" This time, Zhang Fan did not make a move. One of his guards blocked in front of Zhang Fan and slapped the fire-eyed golden ape back. Dang! 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 The fire-eyed golden ape retreated dozens of miles. The terrifying force caused his blood to churn. If Xiahou Zhua had not secretly helped him neutralize most of the force, the fire-eyed golden ape would have been severely injured. Immortal Monarch. The fire-eyed golden ape looked at the middle-aged man angrily. The fire-eyed golden ape was very strong. Although he was only in the Nine Heavens Xian Immortal realm, ordinary immortal kings were not his match. And to be able to send him flying or even severely injure him, one had to be at least in the Immortal Monarch realm. Chapter 667. Xiahou Zhua didn't even bother to look at Zhang Fan and the others when they came looking for trouble. After all, the strongest among them was only at the Immortal Monarch realm. In Xiahou Zhua's eyes, this level of strength was just like an ant. However, now that he saw the Immortal Monarch realm experts attacking the fire-eyed golden ape, who was only at the Nine Heavens Xian Immortal realm, Xiahou Zhua was a little annoyed by such shameless behavior. He couldn't help but snort coldly. However, just as he was about to punish and chase these flies away, Zhao Jiqing's voice sounded in his ears. "Senior Xiahou, you don't have to trouble yourself with them. You just have to make sure they don't disturb Moreau. I'll deal with these people." Xiahou Zhua took a deep look at Zhao Jiqing. Since Zhao Jiqing said so, he didn't object. After all, he was an Immortal Emperor realm expert. It was enough to ensure that Zhao Jiqing wouldn't be hurt. "I'll give you 10 breaths of time. Get as far away as you can. After 10 breaths of time, I'll kill you without mercy." Zhao Jiqing took a few steps forward and came before Zhang Fan and the others. Her expression was cold and murderous as she spoke. Looking at the beautiful Zhao Jiqing, Zhang Fan and the others revealed a perverted look in their eyes. Zhang Fan, on the other hand, was sizing up Zhao Jiqing with a green light in his eyes. "What a feisty little girl, but I like it." Zhang Fan looked at Zhao Jiqing with glowing eyes and spoke without restraint. He didn't take Zhao Jiqing's words seriously at all. 5 breaths of time left. Zhao Jiqing looked at Zhang Fan and the others indifferently. "Little girl, why don't you come back with me? You can eat and drink well with me. It's much better than following these useless people." Zhang Fan smiled and reached out to touch Zhao Jiqing's face. A cold light flashed in Zhao Jiqing's eyes. Then she slapped him. Slap. After a crisp slap, Zhang Fan's whole person was suddenly sent flying. She was slapped by Zhao Jiqing. Zhao Jiqing's speed was simply too fast. Other than Xiahou Zhua, even the nearby immortal monarchs were unable to react in time. However, it didn't take long for Zhang Fan's bodyguard, who was an immortal monarch, to regain his senses. Courting death. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a ferocious glint as he shouted. He stretched out his big hand to grab Zhao Jiqing. He opened his hand, and a terrifying power shot out from his 5 fingers. It tore through the void and ferociously attacked Zhao Jiqing. A cold glint flashed in Xiaohua's eyes, but he did not attack. Since Zhao Jiqing had the confidence to deal with them, Xiaohua also wanted to see Zhao Jiqing's true strength. Of course, the fact that Xiaohua didn't make a move didn't mean that he was relaxed. At this moment, he had secretly prepared a substitute. Once Zhao Jiqing was in danger, he would immediately attack. Seeing Zhang Yuan charging over, Zhao Jiqing didn't show any fear on her face. On the contrary, a strong fighting spirit rose in her. Boom! At this moment, Phoenix divine fire burned on Zhao Jiqing's body. At the same time, Zhao Jiqing shouted. Endless Phoenix divine fire condensed into a divine sword and slashed at Zhang Yuan's attack. Bang! After a loud explosion, Zhao Jiqing's divine sword couldn't block Zhang Yuan's attack and was shattered. However, Zhang Yuan's attack had also lost a portion of its power. Zhao Jiqing snorted coldly. She formed a divine sword again and slashed at Zhang Yuan. Another deafening boom rang out, and Zhang Yuan's attack was shattered. However, Zhao Jiqing was also forced to take a few steps back. Zhang Yuan's face was filled with shock. Although he had only reached the early stage of the Immortal Monarch realm, Zhao Jiqing hadn't even reached the Immortal Monarch realm. However, Zhao Jiqing was able to take his attack head-on. Although Zhao Jiqing was at a disadvantage, there was still a large gap between the two of them. Zhang Yuan, don't kill this bitch. Bitch, how dare you hit me? I'll let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. Zhang Fan's eyes flashed with hatred. He couldn't accept the humiliation of being slapped by a woman. Zhang Fan, this woman is still a beauty. It's a waste to kill her. Why don't you take her down and let us enjoy her first? Li Song said with a chuckle. He didn't try to hide his words. Don't worry. This bitch and the other 3 bitches won't be able to escape. I'll let you have her when I'm done playing with her. Then, I'll reward her. I'm sure many people will like her. Zhang Fan's eyes flashed with hatred as he said, with a sinister smile. Let's just kill these men. Do you need my help? Huang Kun walked over and looked at Xiaohua and the others coldly. Don't worry. They won't be able to escape. Zhang Fan sneered as he looked at the battle between Zhang Yuan and Zhao Jiqing. At this moment, Zhao Jiqing and Zhang Yuan had been fighting for a long time. However, there was still a large gap between their strength. Although Zhao Jiqing was strong, she was still suppressed by Zhang Yuan. However, she was only at a disadvantage. Zhao Jiqing hadn't shown any signs of defeat yet. Her Phoenix Divine Fire was too terrifying. Even Zhang Yuan, who was an Immortal Monarch realm expert, didn't dare to go too far. This little girl should be the one who benefited from the Phoenix Divine Fire, right? Did she really obtain the inheritance of the Phoenix tribe? Or did she awaken the Phoenix bloodline? After the Divine Rule, Divine Tablet flew away. Most people left the Heavenly Eagle Ridge immediately. However, there were many people who didn't leave. At this moment, many people came over when they saw that there was a battle. This girl is so strong. She's fighting an Immortal Monarch realm expert as an Immortal King. Although she's at a disadvantage, she hasn't lost yet. I wonder if she's already so strong, or if it's because she benefited from the Divine Rule Divine Tablet. She was only a 9 Heavens Mystic Immortal before. However, even if she benefited from the Divine Rule Divine Tablet, I'm afraid she won't be able to escape today. The people she offended are all young disciples of the major forces in the Heavenly Eagle State. The strongest person on this girl's side is only an Immortal King. I'm afraid they're no match for Zhang Fan and the others. Why don't you be the hero and save the girls? If you save them, they might fall in love with you at first sight and offer themselves to you. Get lost. I can't afford to offend those thugs. I'll just watch the show, save them and whatnot. Many people couldn't afford to offend the families of Zhang Fan and the others. On the other side, Zhao Jiqing and Zhang Yuan were fighting. Zhao Jiqing was at a disadvantage, but it was impossible for Zhang Yuan to defeat Zhao Jiqing in a short period of time. Phoenix appear. In the middle of the battle, Zhao Jiqing suddenly shouted in her heart. At the same time, a loud rumbling sound came from Zhao Jiqing's body. Almost at the same time, endless phoenix divine fire rushed out of her body and finally condensed into a fiery red phoenix in the void above her head. As soon as the phoenix appeared, an aura that seemed to come from ancient times emanated from the phoenix's body. An incomparably terrifying pressure spread out, intimidating the myriad of worlds and all living beings. At this moment, everyone within a radius of tens of thousands of miles in the square felt the terrifying pressure from ancient times. Many people were involuntarily intimidated by the terrifying pressure and were forced to retreat. It was to the extent that some of the weaker ones were even trembling from this pressure. This was just the aura that the phoenix unintentionally emitted. If this aura was concentrated on a single person, perhaps even a celestial king realm expert would be directly crushed to death by this terrifying pressure. Clang! The phoenix let out a clear and resonant cry. Then, the phoenix transformed into a streak of fire and pounced at Zhang Yuan at an extremely terrifying speed. During this process, the phoenix's two claws, which are like god artifacts, tore through the sky with terrifying power, viciously swiped at Zhang Yuan. Zhang Yuan's expression changed drastically. He knew that if the phoenix clawed at him, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. The phoenix was simply too powerful. It gave Zhang Yuan a feeling of invincibility, and he couldn't summon up the courage to resist. However, Zhang Yuan was a Duke Celestial after all. With a loud roar, he instantly raised his strength to the limit and punched out with both fists. It wasn't that he didn't want to run, but it was too late. He could only take the attack head-on. Boom! The phoenix swooped down and violently collided with Zhang Yuan's attack. A terrifying explosion of energy caused Zhang Yuan to spit out a mouthful of blood. His strength had been destroyed by the phoenix. Although the phoenix had dimmed a little, it did not disappear. It continued to pounce at Zhang Yuan with incomparable speed. "I'll fight you to the death." Zhang Yuan roared furiously. Terrifying waves of energy erupted from his body as he clashed with the phoenix. Boom! 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 Zhang Yuan's strength was so great that the phoenix's figure kept dimming. However, he was also consuming a terrifying amount of energy. At this moment, more than half of his strength had been depleted. With a loud bang, Zhang Yuan viciously punched the phoenix. Finally, the phoenix was smashed into pieces by his fist. However, before Zhang Yuan could heave a sigh of relief, a sword ray that carried the aura of death shot toward him from afar. Puffed! The sword ray flashed, and Zhang Yuan's head flew into the sky, accompanied by a spray of blood. A Duke Celestial was killed just like that. He was killed by Zhao Jiqing, who was only a Celestial King. Silence. The surrounding people fell silent as they stared at Zhao Jiqing in shock. They were stunned by her strength. After killing Zhang Yuan, Zhao Jiqing's body swayed as if she couldn't stand properly. Yu Mengqing and Mu Liyue hurriedly flew over to support Zhao Jiqing. Although Zhao Jiqing had successfully killed Zhang Yuan, she had used up a lot of energy as well. This was especially true for the Phoenix transformation. It had almost exhausted all of Zhao Jiqing's strength. Chapter 668. Zhang Yuan was killed. Zhang Fan was stunned when he saw Zhang Yuan's corpse lying on the ground. He was unable to react for a moment. Zhang Yuan was a guard given to him by his family. He was a powerful immortal Duke expert. Zhang Fan could not believe that such an expert had been killed by Zhao Jiqing, who was only in the Immortal King realm. Zhang Yuan is dead. Zhang Fan's eyes flashed with a fierce light as he came to a realization. Then, he looked at Zhao Jiqing's figure with hatred. His figure flashed, and he turned around to escape. At the same time, Li Song and Huang Kuen's expressions changed. They subconsciously retreated. You're leaving just like that? At this moment, a faint voice that was filled with cold, killing intent rang in Zhang Fan and the others' ears. At the same time, Zhang Fan, who was retreating, was sent flying as though he had crashed into a wall. What the hell is that? Zhang Fan was shocked as he looked ahead. However, he was shocked to find that there was nothing in front of them. At the same time, Li Song and the others were the same. Anyone who dares to take another step forward will die. A cold voice rang out. An intense, killing intent that was as cold as ice filled the air, drowning the entire area. At that moment, Murong Yu, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly stood up. Powerful auras constantly emanated from his body, causing ripples to appear in the void around him, intimidating the myriad of worlds. Immortal King Realm. Xiaohua's eyes lit up when he saw Murong Yu standing up. A look of joy appeared on his face. That's right, Murong Yu had successfully broken through to the Immortal King Realm. Back to when Zhao Jiqing and Zhang Yuan were fighting. Before Zhao Jiqing and Zhang Yuan's battle, Murong Yu had already begun to break through to the Immortal King Realm. During their battle, Murong Yu had finally broken through to the Immortal King Realm. However, at that time, everyone's attention was on the battle between Zhao Jiqing and Zhang Yuan. On the other hand, Murong Yu's breakthrough in cultivation didn't cause any phenomena of the heavens and the earth, so practically no one noticed that he'd actually stepped into the Immortal King Realm from the Nine Heaven Xian Immortal Realm. However, Murong Yu did not immediately stop cultivating after he had just broken through. Instead, he continued to cultivate and consolidate his realm. At this moment, Murong Yu finally stabilized his cultivation base at the Immortal King Realm before he woke up. When he woke up, it was just when Zhang Fan was about to escape. As for Zhang Fan and the others, although Murong Yu had been breaking through before, he could still see them clearly. It was just that he was in the midst of breaking through at that time and had not woken up at the critical juncture. Of course, this was also because of Xiaohua. Otherwise, even if Murong Yu gave up this opportunity to break through, he would still wake up and kill Zhang Fan and the others. With Xiaohua, an immortal emperor, around, Murong Yu wouldn't have to worry about the safety of Zhao Jiqing and the others. Naturally, he could break through without worry. Murong Yu naturally wouldn't let a scum like Zhang Fan off. Therefore, when he saw that Zhang Fan was about to escape, Murong Yu used the power of space to set up a space armband in front of them, blocking their bodies and preventing them from escaping. Big hooligan. The moment they saw Murong Yu stand up, Zhao Jiqing and the other two finally revealed a look of joy. This was because they discovered that Murong Yu had broken through to the Immortal King Realm. His strength had become even stronger. Murong Yu nodded and waved his hand, sending a stream of life force into Zhao Jiqing's body to heal her injuries. In fact, Zhao Jiqing wasn't injured much. She had just exhausted too much energy. Who gave you the guts to do this? How dare you have designs on my woman? However, I'm in a good mood today, so I won't bicker with you. Hand over all your treasures, then kowtow and apologize. Leave behind an arm and a leg, then you can scram. Murong Yu turned to look at Zhang Fan and the others and said indifferently with narrowed eyes. When the crowd heard the first half of Murong Yu's sentence, they felt that Murong Yu wasn't a bad person. Since he didn't make a fuss about it, they assumed that he would let Zhang Fan and the others off. However, when they heard the second half of the sentence, they were all speechless. This was called being in a good mood, not bickering with Zhang Fan and the others. If this was considered as not being calculative, then what would be considered as calculative? The surrounding people were speechless, but Zhang Fan and the others were livid. Kid, this matter has nothing to do with us. Huang Kuan took a step forward and looked at Murong Yu with a gloomy expression. Oh, nothing to do with you? Li Song, do you think so too? Murong Yu didn't say anything and just looked at the two of them indifferently. Li Song's heart skipped a beat. Then he sneered and said, "This matter indeed has nothing to do with me. Besides, it's one thing for you to kill Zhang Yuan. Let's just end this matter here." "And here? Are you saying that you won't agree to my conditions? Fine, I'll give you another choice. Die. As he spoke, Murong Yu's powerful aura burst out and enveloped Zhang Fan and the others. Cold, killing intent burst out without any concealment. Although he was in the midst of breaking through, he had heard what Zhang Fan and the others had said clearly. Not only did these bastards have designs on Zhao Jiqing and the others, but they also wanted to reward their subordinates after they were tired of playing with them. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Jiqing and the others were strong, they would have been killed by Zhang Fan and the others. Zhang Fan and the others had done this many times. In Murong Yu's eyes, Zhang Fan, Li Song, and Huang Kun were all star-level villains. If he killed them, Murong Yu would get a lot of star points. The only reason he didn't kill them immediately was because of the power behind them. A mere immortal king is so arrogant. Let's see if each of you has the strength to kill an immortal monarch expert. Huang Zhong, kill them for me. Huang Kun was enraged. Li Kong, you go and have some fun too. Pay attention, just kill those men. Don't hurt those women. Otherwise, it won't be fun anymore. Li Song's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said coldly. Huang Zhong and Li Kong were immortal monarchs of the Huang family and the Li family. They were the guards of Huang Kun and Li Song. When they heard their master's words, they walked out without a word and slowly approached Murong Yu. Holy Lord, I don't need to kill these two guys, right? Xiaohua transmitted his voice to Murong Yu. He saw that Murong Yu was strong and guessed that Murong Yu should have no problem killing the two of them. Although the two of them were immortal monarchs, and Murong Yu was only an immortal king, Xiaohua was still an immortal monarch. They're just two pieces of trash. Killing them will be easy. Murong Yu transmitted his voice back, his tone full of disdain. Kid, you can't offend just anyone. Now you can die. Huang Zhong laughed nastily and stretched out his hand to slap Murong Yu. He wanted to slap Murong Yu to death. At the same time, Li Kong made his move. However, he didn't attack Murong Yu. Instead, he slapped Xiaohua. Seeing that Li Kong wanted to attack Xiaohua, the fire-eyed golden ape and the others were stunned. The same thought appeared in their minds. This guy must be tired of living. Interesting. However, you belong to the Holy Lord, so I won't interfere. Xiaohua's eyes flashed. He smiled faintly and lightly waved his hand. Slap. The moment Huang Zhong and the others made their move, Murong Yu made his move as well. With a flash, Murong Yu appeared in front of Huang Zhong. His big hand slapped over fiercely. Huang Zhong only saw a blur in front of his eyes. Then, he heard the crisp sound of slap. Then, he felt a burning sensation on his face. A powerful force surged towards him, and he was instantly sent flying. What terrifying speed, what powerful strength. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were shocked. Some of the stronger people were even more shocked when they saw Murong Yu make his move. At the same time, Li Kong was also pushed back a few steps by Murong Yu's slap. He came to a place near Murong Yu. Murong Yu smiled faintly and kicked out fiercely. With a bang, Murong Yu kicked Li Kong's butt. A powerful force erupted and sent Li Kong flying out with a kick. A slap and a kick sent two immortal monarchs flying. This strength was too terrifying. The surrounding people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They were shocked by Murong Yu's strength. However, Huang Zhong and Li Kong were furious. They were immortal monarchs, but they were slapped by an immortal king, kicked in the butt. If news of this spread, they would have to wear masks when they go out in the future. With a furious roar, Huang Zhong and Li Kong instantly exploded with power. They turned into two rays of divine light and charged towards Murong Yu. Their auras were huge, and their moves were fierce. They wanted to kill Murong Yu. Considering that it's not easy for you to cultivate, leave this place immediately. Otherwise, I'll kill you without mercy. Facing the two menacing people, Murong Yu was fearless. He didn't even defend or dodge. He just stood there and said indifferently, "Die." Huang Zhong and Li Kong roared. Violent and fierce attacks poured down in an instant, strangling Murong Yu. Since that's the case, I'll send you on your way. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. He formed a hand seal in front of his chest and then shouted space/kill. At this moment, Huang Zhong and Li Kong felt an extremely strong aura of death enveloping them. The two of them were shocked. They no longer cared about killing Murong Yu. Their bodies shook and were about to retreat. However, it was too late. Puff! Two clouds of blood mist exploded in the void. Without any warning, Huang Zhong and Li Kong were cut into two at the same time. They were cut in half at the waist. Chapter 669. The two immortal monarchs were killed in an instant. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were shocked. Whether it was the weak or the strong who had reached the immortal emperor realm, they were all shocked. This was because they didn't know how Murong Yu killed them. There were no traces of weapons, and there weren't even any fluctuations of power. If it was a weak immortal, many of the people present would be able to kill him without any ripples of energy. However, these two were immortal monarchs, especially when the one who killed them was only at the immortal king realm. Space/ could be the power of space. Many people heard Murong Yu's low shout just now. For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Murong Yu. Space and time were the most mysterious laws and one of the most mysterious powers. If one could control these two laws, it would be very terrifying. Could it be that Murong Yu had mastered the space law? Everyone sized up Murong Yu. Their eyes flickered, and thousands of thoughts flashed through their minds. If I can obtain the law of space as well, my strength will definitely increase by several folds. I'll become even stronger. As they sized up Murong Yu, the gazes of some people gradually turned fiery. Looking at the corpses of Huang and Zhong, Murong Yu's eyes burst out with a bright divine light, and a smile appeared on his face. Space/ was actually a use of space power. Space power was the same as ordinary power. It could be used to attack and defend. When defending, it could condense into a space shield, a space barrier, and so on. Not only could it be used for defense, but it could also be used as a restriction. In terms of attack, space power also had an extremely strong lethality. It was even more terrifying than ordinary power. After controlling space power, as long as Murong Yu was willing, he could make space power transform into any shape, like a sword, a club, and so on. Of course, with Murong Yu's current strength, this was all he could do. If he had a better understanding and control of space power, it could be said that the entire world would be under his control. In that world, he would be the ruler of everything. However, Murong Yu was still far from reaching that level. Even if he hadn't reached that level, the lethality of the current space/ was still very terrifying. This was mainly reflected in its mysteriousness and element of surprise. Generally, after a strike, there would be more or less energy fluctuations. The stronger one was, the easier it would be to discover these fluctuations and defend against them. Space energy, on the other hand, did not have any energy fluctuations. It could achieve the greatest level of sneak attack, catching the enemy off guard. Huang Kun, Li Song, and the rest looked at Murong Yu in a daze. The sinister smile on their faces seemed to have been frozen. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. 10 breaths of time has passed. You can go on your way. Murong Yu turned his head to look at Zhang Fan and the other two, sneering as he slowly approached them. You cannot kill me. I'm a member of the Huang family. If you dare to touch a single hair on my head, the Huang family will never let you off. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, our Huang family will hunt you down. We will not rest until we are dead. Seeing Murong Yu slowly walking over, Huang Kun was so scared that his face turned pale. At the same time, he shouted in horror. He tried to use the Huang family's strength to intimidate Murong Yu. Our Li family and the Zhang family's strength are about the same as the Huang family. We are one of the strongest forces in the Heavenly Eagle state. If you dare to touch a single hair on our head, you will never be able to leave the Heavenly Eagle state. Li Song also laughed sinisterly. Murong Yu walked over step by step. With every step he took, the ground would tremble. It shook Zhang Fan and the other two to an inexplicable fear in their hearts. From the moment you set your eyes on my woman, you were destined to die. I have already given you what I wanted, but you didn't cherish it. Murong looked at them indifferently, with a disdainful expression. He continued, I have given you so much time, you must have already sent a message to your family, right? It's a pity that they haven't come after so long. It seems like your status in the family isn't that great. Zhang Fan and the other two's faces turned even paler. Murong was right. They had already sent out a message to ask for help. According to the usual speed, the people from their family should have arrived by now. However, they hadn't. Murong's eyes suddenly emitted a cold light. Spatial slash. Just as Murong was about to attack, Zhang Fan and the other two's eyes suddenly emitted an intense, murderous light. Die. The three of them roared at the same time and exploded with their strongest attack. It shattered the void and rapidly bombarded Murong, wanting to kill Murong. Puff! Murong stood on the spot without a change in his expression. As soon as Zhang Fan and the other two's attacks were launched, they were already cut in half by the spatial slash. Just like Li Kong and Huang Zhong, they were directly killed. However, even though Zhang Fan and the other two were dead, the power they launched did not dissipate. It was still attacking Murong. Looking at the powerful power that was attacking him, Murong only snorted coldly. Then, the surrounding people saw the power dissipating into thin air. A cold snort shattered the power. His strength was so terrifying, even a mortal monarch couldn't shatter the power with just a cold snort, right? Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were shocked again. All of them looked at Murong with bewildered eyes. Many people who had a strange feeling in their hearts had no choice but to suppress the restlessness in their hearts. Murong was really powerful. What power did he have that he hadn't used yet? If they rushed up rashly, they would be courting death. In fact, Murong's strength was not that strong. Although he had broken through to the Immortal King realm and his strength had increased by several times, it was impossible for him to shatter the strongest attacks of 3 Immortal Kings with a cold snort. This was the use of the power of space. He directly controlled the power of space to destroy the power. And the power of space was so strong that not many people saw this scene. This kid is very powerful. Ordinary immortal monarchs are probably no match for him. Perhaps he has the strength to fight against an immortal emperor. In the distance, a group of people looked over and an expert said indifferently, "How is that possible? The ones who were killed were just trash. Why don't I go and kill him directly?" Another person looked at Murong in disbelief. His face was cold and murderous. "Don't be rash. This kid's strength is too terrifying, and he killed the people of our Gong clan. Our Gong clan will not rest until one of us is dead. If we let him continue to grow, I'm afraid it will be a disaster for us. We can only strangle him in the cradle." The expert who spoke earlier said indifferently. However, he couldn't suppress his murderous intent. "Let's just kill him right here, right now. I don't believe that he can escape from the hands of us immortal emperors." The young immortal emperor from the Gong clan said in a deep voice. The person beside him is Xiahou Zhua, an immortal emperor realm expert. He has an emperor weapon and is very powerful. If we act rashly, I'm afraid we won't be able to kill Murong. This matter needs to be discussed at length. We must kill him in one strike. Murong, Heavenly Court, an ant-like existence, is actually so powerful. Does he really control the power of space? If that's the case, we'll be even more powerful if we take him down. Moreover, we can also obtain his space treasure. This is something that the palace master ordered us to seize back then. However, this kid is very powerful, and the Heavenly Court is developing rapidly. I'm sure the Heavenly Punisher Palace won't let us act so easily. It's not good to do this openly. We can only act secretly and kill him in one strike. On the other side of the square, a few experts from the Immortal Palace looked at Murong with murderous intent. In a corner of the square, a few experts stood there and looked at Murong with smiles on their faces. This kid is the founder of the Heavenly Court? the enforcer of the Huaxia cultivation world and the wind and fire cultivation world. This time, he even benefited from the divine rule heavenly tablet. How can us old guys endure this? This kid is not bad. If he's given enough time, the heavenly court might become even more powerful. It might even become a super force. However, it seems like someone from the Heavenly Punisher Palace wants to kill him. These be asterisk stars. It's bad enough that they're forming factions in the Heavenly Punisher Palace. All these years, they've been annexing and harming the branches of other sects and experts. They've caused the Heavenly Punisher Palace to be in a state of disunity. It's time to reorganize them. Otherwise, we'll definitely lose. Let's not interfere in this matter. If Murong Yu can withstand the pressure from all sides, he'll be the best candidate, an old man said calmly. These people were speaking within the soundproof restriction. Other than them, no one else knew what they were talking about. Moreover, they were too far away from Murong Yu, and their vision was blocked by the restriction. Murong Yu did not notice them. All right, let's leave the Heavenly Eagle Ridge first. Murong Yu turned around and left with Zhao Jiqing and the rest after killing Zhang Fan and the other two. My lord, you seem to be getting crazier and crazier. The fire-eyed golden ape came over and chuckled. Golden ape, what did you say? Murong Yu turned to look at the fire-eyed golden ape with a dangerous aura in his eyes. The fire-eyed golden ape shuddered and quickly said, I'm saying that, my lord, you're too mighty and too powerful. You've made us prostrate ourselves in admiration. You're too weak. You were actually defeated by trash like Zhang Fan. Aren't you embarrassed? Murong Yu said with a faint smile. The fire-eyed golden ape was instantly depressed and muttered softly, I'm only a 9 heavens Xian immortal, while Zhang Yuan is an immortal monarch. I'm not as crazy as you. How could I withstand his attack? Sacred Lord, we're going back just like that? I'm sure the Zhang family's people will be here soon. Xiahou walked over and said in a deep voice. Zhang Fan's family was definitely a first-rate faction and was extremely powerful. If they swarmed over, they would not be a match at all. Chapter 670. Murong Yu pondered. He had also considered this problem. However, if he put Zhao Jiqing and the others into the Hichu Luoshu world, others would know that he had a spatial treasure that could carry living people. In this way, many people who didn't want to attack him would immediately attack him. However, if he didn't put Zhao Jiqing and the others in, once they were swarmed, the terrifying power would pour down. Even if Zhao Jiqing and the others were much stronger, they probably wouldn't be able to resist. Suddenly, Murong Yu's expression changed slightly. Sacred Master, what's wrong? Although Murong Yu hit it very well, he was still discovered by Xiahou Zhua. Therefore, he asked through voice transmission. We're being followed, and it's not just one party. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly as he said in a deep voice. We're being followed? Xiahou Zhua's face revealed a strange expression because he had nothing to do with it. He was an immortal Emperor Realm expert, but he didn't notice it. How did Murong Yu notice it? Didn't this mean that Murong Yu was much stronger than him? At least in terms of perception, Murong Yu was much stronger than him. In fact, Murong Yu's perception might not be as strong as Xiahou Zhua's. The reason why he was like this was because of the spatial law. After his strength broke through to the immortal king realm, his understanding of the spatial law deepened, and his control of spatial power became more smooth. Spatial slash was one of the manifestations. If Murong Yu was in the 9 heavens Xian immortal realm, although he could also condense a spatial slash, there was a huge gap between its lethality and now. At that time, the spatial slash condensed would be difficult to kill even an immortal king realm expert, let alone an immortal monarch realm expert. Of course, this was also related to his strength becoming stronger. In addition, the defensive ability of his spatial shield had also skyrocketed. Then there was the ability to sense the surrounding space. For example, there were experts who had locked onto Murong Yu from afar and were secretly following him. Even Xiahou Zhua didn't notice it, but Murong Yu could feel it. Regardless of whether it was spiritual force or power, as long as it traveled through space, it would cause spatial fluctuations. This kind of fluctuation was very obscure. Even an immortal venerable might not be able to sense it. However, Murong Yu, who had mastered the rules of space, could easily sense it. Oh no! They attacked. Defend. At this moment, Murong Yu's expression suddenly changed. At the same time, he also moved. With a wave of his hands, spatial shields enveloped them. At the same time, Xiahou Zhuo also sensed it. Without any hesitation, he roared and summoned the golden brick in his hand. It grew to the size of a mountain and soared into the sky. Rumble. Before Murong Yu and Xiahou Zhuo could react, a storm of attacks tore through space and descended from the sky. They instantly engulfed Murong Yu and the others. Bang! These terrifying forces bore the brunt of Xiahou Zhuo's golden brick. Then, an extremely terrifying explosion erupted. The golden brick originally emitted a golden light like a small sun and exuded an extremely powerful aura. However, at this moment, after being engulfed by the torrential force, the golden light on the golden brick instantly dimmed. Even the golden brick, which was originally the size of a mountain, shrank to only a few dozen meters in size. At the same time, it was suppressed and rushed down. One could imagine how terrifying these forces were. The golden brick was connected to Xiahou Zhuo's mind. When it was attacked fiercely, Xiahou Zhuo was instantly injured. The opponent's attack was too terrifying. Everything happened in an instant. Even though Murong Yu was the first to react, he only managed to set up a few layers of spatial shields when Xiahou Zhuo was injured. Spatial barrier. Spatial transfer. Murong Yu roared in his heart. Bursts of spatial power erupted and formed a powerful spatial barrier in the void above their heads, trying to block these torrential attacks. At the same time, Murong Yu began to control the spatial power and began to transfer these torrential forces to a distant place. Rumble, Murong Yu's comprehension of spatial laws had greatly exceeded before. The power of the spatial barrier had also increased by many times. However, it could not block the bombardment of these forces at all. In the blink of an eye, dozens of spatial barriers were torn into powder by these forces. Although they were able to slightly block these forces and consume a part of them. However, the attacks were still sharp and frantically bombarded. Chi-chi, above the void, a series of noises sounded. Layers of ripples appeared in the void. This was the sound of Murong Yu's failed attempt to divert the energy away from his body. The power of these attacks was so terrifying that Murong Yu could not transfer them away at all. He had just condensed the power, but it was already shattered by these forces. Black Lotus, come out! Murong Yu's face changed drastically as he roared in his heart. Black Lotus instantly erupted with spatial power. However, to Murong Yu's horror, Black Lotus could not transfer these forces away. These forces were so terrifying that they had exceeded the limit of what Black Lotus could resist. Break! At this moment, Xiahou Zhuo roared crazily. The golden brick suspended above their heads that was rapidly being suppressed erupted with a dazzling light once again. It rapidly enlarged and soared into the sky. Rumble! A series of earth-shattering noises continued to spread. Under Xiahou Zhuo's full control, the golden brick violently collided with the forces, constantly consuming the torrential forces. However, these forces were so terrifying that even Xiahou Zhuo's full power could only resist for a while. Not long after, he violently vomited blood as the golden brick was suppressed again. Buzz! At this moment, Zhao Jiqing and the others finally reacted. After they reacted, they immediately attacked and unleashed their strongest attacks towards the terrifying forces in the sky in an attempt to shatter them. A city-like magic treasure soared into the sky and welcomed the power that was pouring down. This was the super treasure that Zhao Jiqing had obtained, the underground palace. She had obtained it when she obtained the inheritance of the Phoenix clan in the Dead Sea. When the underground palace soared into the sky, a ray of yellow light erupted. Following that, a picture scroll rapidly enlarged and soared into the sky. Finally, It floated in front of Murong-yu and the others. Hichu Luo Shu. Murong-yu had even summoned the Hichu Luo Shu. Yin-yang fire, burn the world. Burn everything. Murong-yu roared as he summoned the yin-yang cauldron. Yin-yang fire spewed out in a frenzy, wanting to burn this world. Bang! The underground palace and the torrential forces collided fiercely. With a puff sound, Zhao Jiqing's face turned pale as she spat out a mouthful of blood. The underground palace was also rapidly shrunk under the bombardment. Finally, it flew down and turned into a ray of light that entered Zhao Jiqing's body. Crack, crack! The spatial barrier continued to shatter as the yin-yang fire soared into the sky and even burned the space. The torrential forces were finally not as ferocious as before. Under the yin-yang fire, they began to be burned to a large extent. However, these forces were still ferocious. Apart from a portion that was burned by the yin-yang fire, there was still a portion of the forces that broke through the yin-yang fire's obstruction and came down. Countless layers of spatial barriers were instantly shattered. Murong-yu's face turned pale and his mind was violently shaken. The blood in his body churned like a raging river. Boom! Finally, after the countless shields were shattered, the power bombarded the He-2 and the Book of the Luo. Just as the energy violently bombarded the He-2 and Luo inscribed scroll, Murong-yu controlled the He-2 and Luo inscribed scroll to open an opening. At this moment, the Hichu Luo Shu was like a ferocious beast. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed most of the forces. Rumble! In the Hichu Luo Shu world, it was as if the end of the world had arrived. The void was constantly shattered, the mountains were flattened, and the earth was blasted into powder. Under the bombardment of these terrifying forces, almost most of the space in the Hichu Luo Shu world was blasted into powder. Bastard! Hichu was furious. He mobilized the forces of the Hichu Luo Shu world and began to frantically kill these invading forces. Puffed, puffed, puff. Even though the majority of the power had been channeled into the He-2 and Luo's time, the power was still too frightening. The attack had already surpassed the limits of what the He-2 and Luo could withstand, and it had directly injured Murong-yu. At the same time, some of the remaining force bombarded down, injuring Yu Mengqing, Mu Liyue, and the others. However, in the end, the terrifying force was blocked. However, Murong-yu and the others were all seriously injured. All of this happened in a very short time, at most 3 breaths of time. It happened very quickly. Tear the void and escape hundreds of millions of miles away. Murong-yu released a force that enveloped everyone. Then, he drew a line in the void with his big hand, and suddenly a pitch-black crack appeared in the void. Then, Murong-yu's figure flashed, and he rushed into the spatial crack with Zhao Jiqing and the others. Just as Murong-yu disappeared from where he stood, an even more frightening power came crashing down on him. Rumble! After an earth-shattering explosion, everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles was directly annihilated by this terrifying force. Unfortunately, Murong-yu and the others were nowhere to be seen. In a place hundreds of millions of miles away, Chie Crack suddenly appeared in the void, and then several figures were spat out of the void and finally fell to the ground. These people were Murong-yu and the others. Murong-yu actually tore the void, crossed countless space-time, and directly escaped hundreds of millions of miles away to appear here. This method was really shocking. Chapter 671. Puff, puff, puff. As soon as they fell from the sky, they couldn't help but spit out blood. Murong-yu even spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale, and his aura was extremely weak and chaotic. In addition, Xiahou Zhuo, Zhao Jiqing, and the others were also seriously injured. Woof! Which bastard attacked us? The large black dog roared as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone, enter my spatial treasure and leave this place first. I'm afraid that the other party will chase after us. Murong-yu's face was gloomy. With a thought A suction force acted on Zhao Jiqing and the others, pulling them into the space of the heavenly punishment token. Then, Murong Yu also disappeared. Yes, it was the heavenly punishment token, not the Hichu Luo Shu. At this moment, the power in the Hichu Luo Shu was still tearing apart every inch of space in the Hichu Luo Shu world. Murong Yu and the others couldn't enter the Hichu Luo Shu world yet. Otherwise, they would be torn apart by the violent power. Who did it? It must be a celestial venerable expert. After entering the heavenly punishment world, Xiaozhua said with a gloomy face and murderous intent. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's heal our injuries first, Murong Yu said in a low voice as he suppressed the endless murderous intent in his heart and Murong Yu. Everyone nodded and sat down cross-legged to heal their injuries. Looking at everyone, Murong Yu's face became even more gloomy. The murderous intent in his heart almost exploded out uncontrollably. Among these people, the ones who were the most seriously injured were Zhao Jiqing and Xiaozhua. After the battle with the celestial monarch Zhang Yuan, Zhao Jiqing was already a little exhausted. She had used up too much of her energy. At that time, she hadn't been injured much. However, just now, she had summoned her underground palace. Although the underground palace was a supreme treasure, it needed to be controlled to unleash its power. At that time, Zhao Jiqing did not have much power. She had just brought out the underground palace, and before she could unleash her power, it was suppressed back. Zhao Jiqing was seriously injured as a result. Not only was his mind severely injured, but his physical body was also almost destroyed. Xiaozhua's situation was the same as Zhao Jiqing's. He was much stronger than Zhao Jiqing. However, he had endured most of the attacks earlier. Although the imperial weapon had neutralized much of the power, Xiaozhua's mind and body had been seriously injured. It could even be said that Zhao Jiqing and Xiaozhua were nearly killed. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Compared to the two of them, Mu Liyue and the others' injuries were lighter, but they were still heavily injured. In other words, Murong Yu and the others were all seriously injured in this sneak attack. This was especially true for Murong Yu. His body, which had reached the level of a royal armament, was now covered in web-like cracks. More than half of his meridians had been shattered, and his mind had been severely injured. Life force, repair for me, Murong Yu suddenly shouted in his heart. Immediately, 7 rays of life force shot out from his body and rushed into Zhao Jiqing and the others, beginning to repair their bodies. The life force could not repair their minds, but it could repair their bodies. It sped up their recovery time. With the nourishment of the life force, Zhao Jiqing and the others' injuries were rapidly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. One could imagine how terrifying the recovery ability of the life force was. Murong, your injuries are not light either. Heal your own injuries first. Zhao Jiqing opened her eyes and looked at Murong Yu. That's right, big gangster. Heal yourself first. It won't be too late to help us when you're better. Although we're heavily injured, it's not fatal. Yu Mengqing said. The others also tried to persuade Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Little man, are you okay? Murong Yu's appearance scared Zhao Jiqing and the others. Everyone's figures flashed, and they were about to rush over. I'm fine. Murong Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, Your injuries have been suppressed by me. Heal yourselves first. After I recover, I'll heal you. As he spoke, Zhao Jiqing and the others suddenly disappeared in front of him. However, he had moved them away. Everyone was recovering in a different space so that they would not disturb others. Oh no! Murong Yu was about to sit down cross-legged to heal his injuries, but his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly thought of Little Z. When he was in the Sky Eagle Ridge, Little Z had already entered the Hichu Luoshu world. But when Murong Yu channeled those forces into the Hichu Luoshu, he did not think about the problem of Little Z being in the Hichu Luoshu world. I hope nothing will happen to Little Z. Murong Yu's face was livid. His figure flashed, and disappeared from the heavenly punishment world and appeared in the Hichu Luoshu world. When he appeared in the Hichu Luoshu world, the whole Hichu Luoshu had changed greatly. It was like a world of its own before, but at this time it was a desert. Almost the whole world was flattened. However, to Murong Yu's relief, nothing happened to little Z. At this time, she was with Hichu. His figure flashed, and Murong Yu came to Hichu's side. "Big brother, what happened to you? You're seriously injured." Seeing Murong Yu come, little Z could not help but exclaim. At this time, Murong Yu was very embarrassed. His face was pale, and on his body, little Z could see small cracks like spider webs on his exposed skin. I knew that something must have happened to Big Brother. "Big Brother, who was it that injured you to this extent? I want to kill him, kill his whole family." At this moment, little Z's young face showed a fierce killing intent. The killing intent that filled the sky emanated from her tiny body and swept out in all directions. "Just now, she wanted to go out, but I stopped her," Hichu said weakly. Those forces were too terrifying. They were all channeled into the Hichu Luoshu world. Now, although Hichu suppressed them, Hichu consumed a lot of energy. "Hichu, you did well." Murong Yu reluctantly nodded his head, then revealed a trace of a smile as he looked at little Z and said, "Big Brother's injuries are fine. As for who injured me to this extent, I also know." After saying that, a cold light flashed through Murong Yu's eyes. No matter who it was, even if the other party was a celestial prime, he would die. Murong Yu already had the intention to kill the other party. "Little Z, you stay here. I will go and heal my injuries first. Hichu, look after little Z. Don't let her mess around." Murong Yu knew little Z. Although little Z did not seem to have any power, her talent was very terrifying. She could directly tear the void and leave Hichu Luoshu. Returning to the heavenly punishment world, the current Hichu Luoshu was not suitable to heal his injuries. Sitting down cross-legged, Murong Yu checked his body, and his face suddenly became gloomy. His injuries were much more serious than he had expected. His entire body was almost shattered. Even though Murong Yu's body had reached the level of a royal armament, at this moment, even a celestial immortal could destroy his body. It could even be said that his body had been bombarded to the point of collapse. Next was his meridians. A large portion of Murong Yu's meridians had been destroyed and completely shattered. If it was an ordinary person, even an immortal emperor's body would be destroyed to this extent. Even with all kinds of immortal pills and divine medicines, it would be impossible to recover to the peak without hundreds of millions of years. It was even possible that he would never recover. One could only imagine how serious Murong Yu's injuries were. In addition, his mind was also injured. Hichu Luoshu's world was destroyed, and his mind was also severely injured. This was something that could not be helped. "No matter who you are, once I find out, I will definitely kill you. No one can stop me from killing you." Murong Yu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. In fact, from the beginning, Murong Yu had already determined that the attacker was a celestial venerate. This was because the strength was too terrifying. He had felt it from the Mu family's ancestor, Mu Lin. However, Mu Lin had not directly attacked him. Instead, this person had directly attacked Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu had a feeling that even if the attacker was a celestial venerate, he was the weakest kind of celestial venerate. His strength was far inferior to Mu Lin's. Otherwise, with such an attack, Murong Yu and the others would not only be seriously injured, but could also be directly killed. Of course, this was also because Murong Yu and the others had reacted quickly and were powerful. If it were not for the fact that they had so many divine weapons and their own strength, if it had been anyone else, they would have been blasted to pieces. Who is this person? How dare he directly attack me? Could it be the Immortal Palace, the Devil's Sect, or the Heavenly Punisher Palace? These three forces immediately flashed through Murong Yu's mind. This was normal. The Devil's Sect and the Immortal Palace had always wanted to kill Murong Yu. And there were also people in the Heavenly Punisher Palace who were eyeing the Heavenly Court covetously. There were quite a number of immortal venerables among these forces. Naturally, they were the prime suspects. No matter who he is, as long as I find out who he is, he will definitely die. Now, I have to heal my injuries first. Murong Yu suppressed the endless murderous intent and began to heal his injuries. Rumble, streams of life energy rushed out of the tree of life like raging waves. Like a tide, like a torrent, it crazily washed Murong Yu's body, bones, and meridians. Murong Yu's destroyed body, under the scouring of the life energy, began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even so, if he wanted to restore his body to its peak, it would take at least 1,000 years. Time acceleration 10,000 times. Murong Yu shouted fiercely and began to burn his immortal meridians to accelerate time. Not only did he accelerate time, but Zhao Jiqing and the others also began to accelerate time. The Heavenly Punisher realm could also accelerate time. Under 10,000 times acceleration, injuries that would have taken 1,000 years to heal could be healed in about a month. This was the benefit of time acceleration, but it required burning a large number of immortal meridians. Chapter 672. In order to accelerate time, the amount of immortal meridians that had to be burned was extremely terrifying. The greater the acceleration of time, the greater the burn. Fortunately, Murong Yu did not lack immortal meridians. With the Tian Fa world as his backing, Murong Yu had an abundance of immortal meridians. Time flew by. More than a month had passed in the immortal world. Under the acceleration of time, by 10,000 times, 1,000 years had already passed. Murong Yu's injuries had also been completely healed. Even his mind had recovered to its peak. I've finally recovered. This is the first time I've suffered such a serious injury. Murong Yu stood up. Murderous intent surged in his heart. Although his strength had improved after this injury, his killing intent towards the person who had attacked him was even more intense. Let's heal Jiqing and the rest first. Murong Yu's figure disappeared on the spot. 1,000 years had passed. With the help of various resources, Mu Liue and the rest had basically recovered. After Murong Yu went over, he used the power of life to cleanse their bodies. Not only did it completely heal their injuries, but it also removed all the hidden injuries that had been buried in their injuries this time. This allowed their cultivation to take a step forward and their strength to become even stronger. At this time, only Zhao Jiqing and Xiahou Zhuo were left. Even though 1,000 years had passed, Zhao Jiqing and Xiahou Zhuo did not have the power of life. Their injuries had only recovered by half. It seemed that it would take at least 5,000 years to fully recover. And this was under the condition of various immortal pills and divine medicines. Without these immortal pills and divine medicines, they might not be able to fully recover even after 10,000 years. One could only imagine how serious their injuries were. Seeing this, Murong Yu's killing intent grew even stronger. He continued to burn his immortal meridians. Time accelerated. Under the acceleration of time and Murong Yu's treatment, Zhao Jiqing and Xiahou Zhuo's injuries were healed in a few days. Of course, in just a few days in the immortal world, hundreds of years had passed under the acceleration of time. Phew, it's finally all repaired. A cold light flashed in Murong Yu's eyes. This time, it was fortunate that he had broken through first. Otherwise, even with Hichu Luo Shu, it would have been difficult for him to escape. After all, when Murong Yu had channeled the terrifying power into the Hichu Luo Shu world, the Hichu Luo Shu world could no longer be directly teleported. At that time, if Murong Yu and the others entered the Hichu Luo Shu world, they would be crushed by the violent power inside. Of course, Murong Yu could also enter the Heavenly Punishment Order. However, the Heavenly Punishment Order could not be moved, and in that state, Hichu Luo Shu could not move either. Once he entered the Heavenly Punishment Order, Murong Yu would become a turtle in a jar and be captured by anyone. Holy Lord, what kind of ability did you use to help us escape? Through the void? Xiaozhua asked curiously. At that time, if Morong Yu had not torn through the void and brought them through hundreds of millions of miles of void, they would not have been able to escape at all. This ability to travel through space was simply too shocking. Even an immortal emperor could not do it. Morong Yu nodded. This is a new ability I comprehended after my breakthrough, spatial travel. I'm still not familiar with it. In reality, it was tearing through the void to travel hundreds of millions of miles. This was one of the abilities of the Zai technique. It could directly travel through space. Fortunately, Morong Yu had comprehended this ability. Otherwise, many of them would have died. In the immortal world, after reaching the immortal emperor realm, one could teleport. Of course, the distance one could teleport depended on one's strength and spirit sense. However, no one had ever been able to teleport hundreds of millions of miles. Not even an immortal sovereign could do it. The longer the distance one teleported, the more terrifying the amount of energy needed to teleport. Even an immortal sovereign's energy would not be enough to sustain teleportation for hundreds of millions of miles. Morong Yu's ability to travel through space was countless times more advanced than teleportation. The longer the teleportation distance, the less energy it consumed. For example, Morong Yu was only in the Immortal King realm, but he could travel hundreds of millions of miles through space. This was also because he was not familiar with this ability. Otherwise, it would not be just hundreds of millions of miles. He could travel even further. Master, you mean to say that this is your first time doing this? And you just comprehended it? Everyone's face turned pale, and their bodies could not help but tremble. One must know that in any space, the space was very stable. However, if one tore through space, it was possible to rush into the spatial turbulence. The spatial turbulence was extremely terrifying. Even an immortal sovereign expert would not dare to enter it. Even an immortal sovereign expert could be torn into pieces by the spatial turbulence. Spatial travel was tearing through the void. If Morong Yu made the slightest mistake, their group would rush into the spatial turbulence. At that time, they would really die without a burial ground. They would be torn into pieces by the spatial turbulence. Seeing everyone's expression, Morong Yu naturally knew what they were thinking. However, he still smiled faintly and said, "Why are you all like this? Don't you believe in my ability? Isn't there nothing at all?" "Lucky, lucky." The fire-eyed golden ape patted his chest and said at the same time. The others nodded secretly, expressing their agreement. Morong Yu had just comprehended this ability. This was the first time he used it, and he even brought the few of them along. If nothing happened even like this, there was really some element of luck involved. Morong Yu instantly felt speechless. However, a trace of fear flashed through his heart. This time, perhaps they were too lucky. Otherwise, they would have been completely miserable if they entered the spatial turbulence. And all of this was caused by the person who attacked. I don't know which bastard attacked. I heard that it was an immortal sovereign expert. F*CK, this old bastard is too shameless. Master, we must find him and beat him to death. The fire-eyed golden ape said angrily. Woof, I'm going to devour that old bastard. The large black dog was also furious. This time, Lord Heavenly Dog had almost died. In short, every one of them was furious. They wanted nothing more than to immediately find that person and kill him. Who exactly is this person? Could it be that the Zhang family attacked? Yu Meiqing frowned slightly and said in a low voice. Zhao Jiqing shook her head and thought for a moment before saying, it shouldn't be the Zhang family. There shouldn't be any immortal sovereign experts in their family. Perhaps they asked the immortal sovereign expert to attack? Mu Liue suddenly said, ask someone to attack? Everyone fell silent. This was not impossible. No matter who the other party is, what force, even if he's a god, if he dares to attack me, I'll kill him. Morong Yu's eyes flashed with killing intent. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in the Hichu Luoshu world. At this moment, the Hichu Luoshu world was still in a mess. If Morong Yu didn't clean up, they could only rely on Hichu. However, Hichu was too exhausted. Although he wasn't injured, he was unable to restore everything in the Hichu Luoshu world. Rebuild the sun and moon, rebuild the earth. Hichu Luoshu, restore for me. Moronyu floated in the sky. Powerful and terrifying energy radiated from his body, connecting with the power of the Hichu Luoshu world. Rumble. Under Morongyu's deliberate efforts, the starry sky in the Hichu Luoshu world began to change, and the earth rose and fell. Stars reappeared one after another, and the earth rose to form mountains. Cracks appeared, and lakes, rivers, and even oceans formed. Under the support of Morongyu's enormous power, the Hichu Luoshu world underwent earth-shattering changes. It began to reform into a new world. However, it would take some time for it to be completely restored. With a flash, Morongyu appeared on the other side of the Hichu Luoshu world. This was an intact space that Hichu had tried his best to preserve. This space was where Morongyu stored all kinds of immortal veins, divine medicines, and other resources. If this space was also shattered, Morongyu would definitely be in great pain, because there were too many things stored here. Even the treasures of ordinary super sex couldn't compare. After appearing here, Morongyu sensed that he could still sense the teleportation points he had set up before. This made him breathe a sigh of relief. If the Hichu Luoshu world was completely destroyed, he wouldn't be able to sense the teleportation points he had set up before. If he couldn't sense the teleportation points, then no matter how powerful the Hichu Luoshu world was, he wouldn't be able to teleport. Teleportation? Then he would just have to reset the teleportation points. It could even be said that these teleportation points were more precious than the treasures Morongyu had stored here. Big brother, you're here? Are your injuries all right? As soon as Morongyu appeared, little Z ran over and threw herself into his arms. Morongyu stroked little Z's little head, smiled, and said, "It's all right." As he spoke, he glanced at Hichu, who was recovering not far away. Hichu wasn't injured, but he had consumed a lot of energy. Morongyu couldn't help him with this. However, there were all kinds of immortal veins here that could restore energy. It was only a matter of time before Hichu recovered. "Little Z, you stay with your sisters first." After saying that, without waiting for little Z to speak, Morongyu sent her into the heavenly punishment token with Zhao, Jiqing, and the others. At this time, Hichu Luoshu was also teleported directly back to the heavenly court in Feng City. Previously, they had only entered the Hichu Luoshu world and didn't teleport out, because at that time, Hichu Luoshu couldn't teleport. After returning to the heavenly court, Morongyu rushed out immediately. Immediately, he spread out his incomparably huge divine sense. Then, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, and then endless anger soared to the sky. The heavenly court wasn't destroyed. This was the reason why Morongyu breathed a sigh of relief. If the expert who attacked him at that time wanted to destroy the heavenly court, Morongyu didn't think that with the current strength of the heavenly court, they could resist. Even if Feng City had a powerful array, it was still the same. However, what made Morongyu angry was that although the heavenly court wasn't destroyed, the situation at this time was not much better. Outside the Feng City, countless experts were bursting out their auras. Endless immortal pressure surged and surrounded the entire heavenly court. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox. Moreover, a terrifying power poured down like raindrops, bombarding Feng City. Chapter 673. Rumble, an incomparably powerful force, which contained a terrifying power that could tear the sky and the earth, was constantly pouring down and bombarding the formation of Feng City. The whole formation, and even Feng City, was trembling violently under the bombardment. Under the bombardment of this terrifying force, the void around Feng City was annihilated. The power was really terrifying. If it were not for the numerous formations protecting Feng City, it would have been destroyed long ago. Even so, the situation in Feng City was not much better. Puff! Another wave of terrifying attacks poured down and bombarded the array formation. The terrifying force almost tore the formation apart. Some of the Heavenly Court's disciples, who were controlling the formation and constantly injecting power into it, spat out blood. They were injured by the terrifying force. Even though the formation had blocked most of the attacks, some of them still managed to escape and hurt many people in Feng City. As far as the eye could see, many buildings in Feng City had collapsed, some even shattered into pieces. Even the sky above Feng City was filled with the smell of blood. Even with the protection of the formation, there were still casualties in the Heavenly Court. Who the hell is attacking the Heavenly Court? They're courting death. Moronyu was furious. At this moment, he saw several Heavenly Court's disciples, who were injecting power into the formation, being blasted into a cloud of blood by the terrifying impact. Swish! Morongyu's figure flashed and arrived at the east gate of Feng City. Black Tiger, what's going on? Morongyu asked in a deep voice as soon as he appeared. Black Tiger and the others were all on the city wall. However, the immortal emperors in the Heavenly Court did not appear. They were all in charge of the formation in the city. If it were not for their powerful formation, Feng City would have been breached long ago. Black Tiger and the others were looking at the people outside with gloomy faces. Their faces were pale, and their chi and blood were surging in their bodies. Their breaths were weak. Obviously, they were all injured, and their injuries were not light. During the interrogation, Xiahou Zhuo and the others were released from the heavenly punishment order by Murongyu. What's going on? Is this a battlefield? Zhao, Jiqing, and the others were shocked as soon as they appeared. All of them looked into the distance in shock. Xiahou Zhuo, reinforce the formation, Murongyu said in a deep voice. Murongyu nodded and sat cross-legged on the ground. Waves of terrifying power burst out and surged into the formation of the Heavenly Court. When Xiahou Zhuo began to add power to the array formation, Zhao Jiqing and the others also began to add power to the array formation. 1. The array formation, which was originally on the verge of collapse from the bombardment, burst into a dazzling light after receiving the support of this powerful force. Instantly, the pressure on everyone in the Heavenly Court lessened a little. Although Xiahou Zhuo and the others were powerful, it was only the tip of the iceberg compared to the entire Heavenly Court. But at the very least, he could increase the power of the formation. Holy Master! Seeing Murongyu appear, Black Tiger and the rest heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Facing those menacing enemies, Heihu and the others were really exhausted. As the master of the Heavenly Court, Murongyu still hadn't appeared, which was a huge blow to the morale of the Heavenly Court. Tell me what's going on. What forces are these people from? Why are they attacking the Heavenly Court? Murongyu looked outside with a gloomy expression. At the same time, waves of life force burst out from his body. With Murongyu's body as the center, the green life force spread out in all directions like raging waves. It didn't take long for the life force to drown the entire Feng City. The incomparably powerful recovery ability began to rapidly heal those who were injured. Regardless of whether they were from the Heavenly Court or not, everyone was within the range of healing. My injuries are healed. A heavily injured immortal king of the Heavenly Court laughed heartily at this moment. He realized that his previous injuries were healed in an instant. It was too miraculous. Mine too. This green power is terrifying. I wonder who did it. Holy Master. It must be the Holy Master. The Holy Master is back. This is the divine ability of the Holy Master. Some disciples of the Heavenly Court had already seen Murongyu, so one by one, they shouted excitedly. Everyone, I am Murongyu, the Master of the Heavenly Court. It is your bravery that has protected Feng City and our home. The reason why Feng City has been standing is because of your joint efforts. Here, I want to thank you. If it weren't for your bravery, Feng City would have been razed to the ground. I express my heartfelt gratitude for everything you have done. However, in the following time, I hope that everyone will work together with me to kill these invaders. Those who dare to offend the Heavenly Court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Murong Yu's voice rang in the ears of everyone in the heavenly court. Coupled with the terrifying recovery ability of the life force, everyone in Feng City was agitated. Some people who were originally in despair also regained their hope and fighting spirit. Those who dare to offend the heavenly court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Those who dare to offend the heavenly court will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Frenzied roars resounded in Feng City. At the same time, the power of the formation in Feng City became stronger. The attacks that poured down did not seem so terrible. On the city wall, Murong nodded. Now, the people of the heavenly court had basically regained their fighting spirit. Although this could solve the current problem, if the people outside did not retreat, Feng City would be destroyed sooner or later. This was something that Murong would not allow. Holy Master, these people suddenly gathered outside Feng City half a month ago and launched a strong attack on the heavenly court. Fortunately, the Holy Master was wise and left a terrible killing formation around Feng City. Otherwise, the heavenly court would have been razed to the ground. Black Tiger said with lingering fear. How much have we lost now? Murong asked in a deep voice. Our reaction was very fast. The moment we were attacked, we propped up the formation. The loss wasn't too great, but this incident was too sudden. About 1% of the people were killed. As for the other losses, they have not been calculated yet. Meow, he said in a deep voice. 1% is still within the acceptable range. Murong nodded. You did well. Your reaction was timely. Murong praised Black Tiger and the others. If Black Tiger and the others were more idiotic and slow to react, they would have lost more than 1% of the people. Even 1/10, 1/5, or the entire heavenly court might have been razed to the ground. However, if they don't retreat, I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for long. Feng Shun's face was gloomy and murderous. The 7 of them could be said to be the first batch of people in the heavenly court. They had already integrated into the heavenly court and completely regarded it as their home. They would never allow their home to be destroyed. Don't worry, these bastards can't do anything to the heavenly court. Murong said indifferently. Endless murderous intent erupted from his body and rushed into the sky. It was impossible for these people to destroy the heavenly court, unless Murong returned. If Murong really had no choice, he could only take all these people into the Hichu Luoshu world and leave this place. But Murong did not want that to happen, nor was he willing to do that. The heavenly court was not a soft persimmon that everyone could pinch. Whoever dared to touch the heavenly court would have to pay the price in blood. Holy Lord, we are useless. We have been trapped here all this time. We don't even know who they are. Red Moon walked up and said apologetically. Murong shook his head. You have already done your best. Now, leave everything to me. I will make them pay a heavy price. After repelling them, these powers will no longer exist in the immortal world. Holy Lord, the attacks outside are terrifying. Our people are unable to leave. Once they leave the array, they will be killed. Batian walked up and said, if not for this, with his personality, he would have already killed his way out. It was also because of this that the heavenly court's losses were so little. There is no need to go out. I will be able to destroy them completely. Murong said faintly. Then, he slowly rose into the sky. Looking from afar, the black gas outside was lingering and soaring into the sky. These people attacking the city were all Stargrade villains. Moreover, their Stargrade wasn't low. If all these people were killed, they should be able to provide Murong with a large amount of star points. Murong slowly closed his eyes. He placed his consciousness into the space and became one with it. If someone could see it, they would see that Murong consciousness had already merged with the space. It was like water ripples spreading out in all directions. In a short instant, Murong consciousness permeated the area within 100 million miles. Unity of heaven and man. Murong seemed to have entered the unity of heaven and man. However, it was not the unity of heaven and man. Within the range of his consciousness, nothing could escape Murong's eyes. The Zhang family, the Li family, In a flash, Murong Yu knew who was attacking the heavenly court. Apart from the Zhang family, the Li family, and the Huang family of Tianying State, there were more than a dozen forces of different sizes. Almost 20 forces were attacking the heavenly court at the same time. All of you will be erased from the immortal world. All forces and all people will die. Murong Yu's killing intent surged. Endless killing intent soared into the sky, as if it wanted to shatter the dome of heaven. Today, all of you will die for me. Spatial storm, erupt for me. Destroy the heavens, destroy the earth, destroy the dome of heaven. Murong Yu suddenly roared in his heart. At the same time that Murong Yu was roaring in his heart, outside the east gate of Feng City, amidst the dense crowd. Pooh, pooh, pooh. For some unknown reason, hundreds of immortals suddenly exploded into clouds of blood mist. They died mysteriously. At the same time, the same happened to the other three forces. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.